Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Became Aizawa's Biggest Mystery? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. There was something not right about Midoriya Izuku. Shoyuta has had that thought several times during first term with this particular problem child. He always kept it in his head with varying tones and cadences as well. Yet, the fact of the matter remains. There was something off about Midoriya Izuku. The kid was a bundle of contradictions and anxieties that bounced off each other in increasingly baffling and complex ways. People are complicated, Shoyuta knows this. Teenagers are especially complex because they're still trying to figure themselves out as a person. They're still trying to be a person with their own thoughts and opinions and beliefs, no longer tethered to their parents or their childhood friends. It was part of growing up and finding yourself, all of that coming-of-age sheet. Granted, Shoyuta is almost 31 and he felt like most days he barely knew who he was. But he knew enough, so that was something. Either way, despite all of this, there's something about Midoriya's massive contradiction, the way he struggles figuring himself out, that just appears off to Shoyuta. It's something that he hasn't had a chance to dwell on too much during the course of the semester. But sometimes, usually after the kid broke a bone or did something particularly self-sacrificing, the thought will reappear. Midoriya has a powerful quirk, strong enough to rival All Might. Midoriya also flinches if someone tries to touch him from behind. Midoriya has the ideal virtues of a hero: kind, empathetic, compassionate, determined. Midoriya doesn't understand that losing his own life is not an acceptable outcome. Midoriya smiles like nothing in the world has ever harmed him. Midoriya eyes him with suspicion and shrinks when Bakugo gets too rowdy. Human beings are illogical. Shoyuta despairs and accepts the fact in equal measure. He watches Midoriya and comes up with more questions than answers. All of it concerns him at the end of the day though. Usually, Shoyuta would handle such things sooner. Given this class's penchant for surprise villain attacks, he has to put it on the back burner. Right now, he wants to make sure his kids live through the villain attacks before poking out their secrets. Of course, it all comes to head while discussing pairings for the final exams with Nezu. Given everything the first-year Hero Corps students at UA have faced so far, but especially 1A, they have to revise the exam. Teachers will act as villains for the students to fight against, testing teamwork. The teams are chosen by him and Nezu with approval from the panel of exam proctors. All very reasonable, very logical. Should is just glad that they're not breaking out the goddamn robots again. The one-on-one meeting with Nezu is when the issue of problem child rears its complicated head. Bakugo and Midoriya? Shoyuta asks as he looks over the potential list that Nezu put forth. Based on testimony of All Might and the others along with footage from training exercises with the two have some sort of rivalry. It makes sense for the pair to work together. Bakugo, especially, would benefit for teamwork from someone that he doesn't actively like. As you can attest, we do not get to choose who we work with in the field, Nezu says with a sip of his tea. Shoyuta pauses at that to gather his thoughts. Bakugo and Midoriya have a history. Some of the class said that they are childhood friends. Granted, Shoyuta didn't really have childhood friends that he grew up with, but now that Nezu labeled it a rivalry outright, actually said the word in reference to the pair. Should is not sure if the word fits them or the label of childhood friends. He thinks of what he's witnessed of their interactions, how Midoriya tracks Bakugo's movements, and something in his gut says this isn't right. Shoyuta believes in introducing his students to the unfairness of life. He believes in being direct with them. He believes in setting limits and boundaries. Shoyuta also knows that his students are children. Sometimes, just sometimes, he wants to make things a bit easier on them. He also thinks of Bakugo and Midoriya in that first exercise. Bakugo's gauntlets and Midoriya barely getting out of the way in time. This isn't right. This isn't right. This isn't right. This is wrong. It settles in Shuta's stomach like a lead weight. Aizawa? Nezu prods, looking at him with sharp eyes. Shoyuta snaps back to life, knowing that he fell into his own head. Hisashi says that it's like watching a computer reboot or seeing someone turn into a living doll. Either way, he knows he'll have to admit his thoughts to his boss. There's something about their dynamic that troubles me, Shoyuta admits after a moment. Something about Midoriya has been bothering me for a while. I've been meaning to address it. But given the circumstances, I've been unable. The principal looks up with sharp, beady black eyes. He places his cup of tea back on the saucer and leans forward. Oh, I'd like to investigate it before we present the pairings to the other teachers. These kids have been through the ringers. Midoriya, especially, seems determined to put himself into an early grave. I don't want him to do so in an exam setting, Shoyuta says carefully. The last time he and Bakugo went against each other, that almost happened. I want to make sure the exam can be as safe as possible for them. Nezu sits back at that. He looks thoughtful, but Shoyuta gets nothing from his boss' facial expressions or tics. Nezu knows how to make himself unreadable. It's a skill Shoyuta envies and admires in equal measure. Something that he's long since folded into his own personality. Only those closest to him really and truly know how to read him. Eventually, Nezu claps his paws together and smiles. We have a week until we present the pairings to the other members of the staff for approval, he says. You have until then to investigate what's bothering you, Aizawa. Otherwise, we'll present the Bakugo and Midoriya team up against All Might to the staff. Shoyuta nods at that, mentally feeling the countdown settle in the back of his head. With that topic handled, he turns back to the list. Now as to the other pairings. Shoyuta keeps an eye on Midoriya and Bakugo during their foundational heroics lesson that day. All Might is out due to an appointment with Recovery Girl and his doctor. Thankfully, it's a classroom lesson, so the potential for property damage and injury is at least 30%. Having one lung and barely a stomach, the man said wryly when he asked Shoyuta and Kan to cover their homeroom's lessons. I'm still amazed that I lived this long. The gallows humor of acceptance is something that would seem out of place with All Might. Shoyuta likes it just fine on Yagi Toshinori though. It makes him seem more real rather than a standard. So yes, All Might has the dubious honor of going to the doctors the most out of anyone in the school. Midoriya included. The meeting with Nezu sits fresh in his mind. With it, the dichotomous issues that make up Midoriya remain at the forefront as he watches the kid lead his team, Kirishima, Siro, Todoroki, Hagakure, and Satu, through the strategy exercise. Rather than curl up in his sleeping bag and doze off, he stands, watching the classroom, walking around between the groups. It's good to change up their expectations, Shoyuta tells himself. He hovers near Midoriya's group after listening over Yaoyorozu's. Minus the bone-breaking, even that's been let up on with the invention of his full cowl technique, Midoriya excels in strategy. During these exercises, he and Yaoyorozu are the ones that people want first pick at. Given both of their issues with confidence, however, neither realize just why their classmates scramble for their plans. His group sits, listening to as Midoriya mutters to himself, working out a plan. It's clear that they're paying attention. Now and then someone will pipe up with a suggestion or a clarification on their quirk. Midoriya will jump a little bit when they speak, stutter out an apology, and usually one of his group members will tell him that it's fine. It's super manly how much you know about quirks. Kirishima says excitedly. How did you get so good? Oh, practice? I liked watching Hero FF fights as a kid. Q quirks, they're like a P puzzle, you know? They're all so amazing. I in my eyes, and no quirk is less than that. Hagakure coos at that. Midoriya-chan, that's really sweet. The green-haired boy turns bright red at that. It's true. Midoriya insists, smiling at his team, one of those grins that makes the world seem kinder than it is. You all are going to be really great heroes one day. He then notices Shoyuta watching them and jumps. He tenses and hunches in on himself a bit, like he's trying to make himself small. Like he's scared of his teacher. Another thing that makes his gut twist. Unpleasantly. But we need to do the exercise still. So where was I? Todoroki glances at Shoyuta for a moment, before moving a bit closer to Midoriya. It's a protective gesture, the underground hero realizes. Todoroki is trying to hide Midoriya away. You were saying something about me and Kirishima working together. Alright. I was wondering, Kirishima-kun, if your skin can absorb H-heat like a S-stone when it's H-hardened. Shoyuta wanders away, half listening to other groups as they work out their plans and not talk about things other than the assignment at hand. He turns his attention to Bakugu's group, which is working less than coherently. Bakugu has improved since the start of the year, even if it is incrementally, but he still has difficulty working with others. Kaminari is attempting to play peacekeeper while Uraraka looks progressively more annoyed. Shuji watches stoically like it's some kind of tennis match with some of his tentacles transformed into extra eyes as they move back and forth to track the argument. Shut up, round face. Bakugu growls at Uraraka. No. We're handling the rescue operations here for this mission, Bakugu. We can't just explode everything. We can't go in hot here. Uraraka wants to be a rescue hero, Shoyuta remembers. He thinks that she'll be good at it too. She has a good balance of take no shit with a kind and friendly disposition. Even if she has been focusing on improving her fighting technique, it's clear she still has her eyes set on her goal. Across the room, Midoriya continues his muttering as his group works out their strategy for a villain apprehension that was assigned to them. He and Bakugu are as far apart as possible. The other groups of students are all in various states of discussion. Even so, Shoyuta notices how Bakugu tracks Midoriya and the tick in his jaw as Midoriya continues his habit with various inputs from his own group. Shoyuta pinpoints the moment before Bakugu will explode, literally and figuratively, to tell Midoriya to shut up. Midoriya, judging by his tense back, seems to almost sense something is about to happen. Shoyuta, without thinking, finds himself stepping in front of Bakugu's line of sight of the other boy. Bakugu freezes for a split second. Shoyuta gives him his usual even stare. The kid works his jaw for a moment, clearly trying to figure out if he can get away with a comment against Midoriya or not. Shoyuta ticks his right eyebrow up, and that seems to tip the scales in Bakugu swallowing the brewing outburst and getting back to his group work. Shoyuta glances again over at Midoriya's group, but sees Todoroki looking at him. Todoroki gives him a single nod, though Shoyuta can't detect the emotion behind it. He does, however, feels like that he passed some sort of test with the red and white-haired boy. Again, the feeling of wrong settles in his instincts. He's brushed off Bakugu's outbursts before, though the first day of class remains the exception. Now, a term in, Shoyuta thinks he should have done something sooner. But the feeling of wrong tugs at it, whispers in his ear, as he settles back into his sleeping bag and keeps a half-opened eye on his students. Shoyuta doesn't have any meetings after the school day finishes. Shinso is currently sick with the stomach flu, based on the email that he got from his protégé's cousin. He has unexpected free time now that he doesn't have to stay after for Shinsu's training to get him into the heroics course. Instead, Shoyuta fills out the paperwork to get access to Midoriya's unrestricted file from Nedzu. There are 2 tiers of filing for UA heroic students. One if their regular file full of basic information such as quirk, grades, a basic list of past injuries, and any known conditions. It's what could not be used against the students, what's accessible via public information. It's kept on the school's system and can be accessed by computers. The unrestricted file is on paper, goes into much more detail, needs permission from Nedzu himself to be viewed, and cannot leave a special room on UA grounds. It's where the real dirt is, so to speak. Given the attack on the USJ and other assorted incidents that happened so far in the year, Shoyuta really does applaud that sort of far-thinking paranoia. Given his and Nedzu's conversation earlier in the day, he doesn't see why permission won't be granted. Looking over Midoriya's unrestricted file would probably answer more questions than not. After Shoyuta completes the paperwork, he decides to take advantage of a few hours of silence by heading back to his and Hizashi's apartment for a nap and getting a head start on dinner. There's this thing. It's called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Basically, it boils down to your mind playing a trick on you. Because sometimes even your head likes to F with your perception of reality. In the end, you can't trust anything at times, not even yourself. Still, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon has more to do with pattern recognition than anything else. Like when you think about a car that you've seen and suddenly you see it everywhere you go. You're not haunted by the car or anything. Nope, your mind is just poised and ready to notice any blue car now that it's in your head. As far as Shoyuta knew, this didn't apply to people. Granted, he also wasn't an expert in cognitive functions of the brain. So really, what did he know? The reason he thinks of the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is because, on his way home, he stumbles across Midoriya. Not that his student notices, too busy offering some comfort to a junior high kid. Shoyuta, being an expert in stealth, moves closer, sticking to the shadows. You get more honest reactions when people don't know that you're there to begin with. He finds people are more genuine when he's not peering over their shoulders. While Midoriya has always had great situational awareness, worryingly great now that Shoyuta thinks about it, when Shoyuta puts his best effort in, he's one of the best in the business in terms of being unnoticed. Won't report them to the school, he catches Midoriya saying to the kid, "You want another tissue?" "I have plenty." "I cry. A lot." The boy sniffs and, presumably, takes the offered tissue. He mops up blood from his nose and scrubs his uniform sleeves against his eyes, mopping up the tears. "Thanks for scaring them off, senpai." The UA uniform seems to put the fear of All Might in most bullies, at least. Let me guess. They have really strong quirks. Yeah. But really any quirk is better than. "I get it," Midoriya says with a voice so full of understanding and resignation that it's like a slap in the face. Shoyuta wants to know how the sentence would have ended. The other kid laughs, voice clogged by blood and tears and snot. "Thought so. When I saw your shoes." Shoyuta pauses at that. From where he's hidden, he sees that both Midoriya and the other boy are wearing the exact same red shoes. He wonders, briefly, what's so special about them that the other boy would think Midoriya would understand. "Maybe you should take tomorrow off," his student suggests to the other kid. "Sometimes when it got too bad, I'd go to the bathroom and GG a bunch to make my mom think I threw up. It usually got me off. Or a migraine. Easy to fake. Won't make your parents worry. Unless they'll get more upset if you're not in the next day." "It's a good idea. Thanks." "No problem. There's a support group I know. It's online, but maybe it would help." "Wouldn't hurt." Aizawa sees Midoriya get one of his ever-present notebooks from his backpack to scribble something down on a blank piece of paper for the kid. He rips it out easily and holds it out. The younger boy hesitates before taking it with bloodied, shaking fingers. "Thanks, senpai." He sees Midoriya's head nod, curls springing with the movement. "Be sure to get the blood out immediately if you don't want your parents to find out about this." "Yeah. I know the drill." Then, like ships passing in the night, Midoriya and the kid separate, the same red shoes scuff against the pavement. Shoyuta stays in the shadows for several minutes with a racing mind. This is wrong. Something's wrong. This isn't right. His instincts scream at him. Over the years he's learned to listen to them, especially when they're this loud and true. Something isn't right with Midoriya. Maybe it had never been right to begin with. Aizawa Shoyuta was going to get to the bottom of it. Cooking will never be Shuta's strongest point. There's a good reason that he would live off nutritional jelly packets if given half the chance. In terms of the household chores, he prefers cleaning to anything to do with the kitchen. Still, every once in a while, he'll try to cook a meal for Hisashi. For some reason that's a total mystery to him, he loves his loud-mouthed husband and wants to do something nice for him that's not picking up takeout on his way home. Hisashi starts going on about love languages again, then he's sleeping on the couch for the next week. Either way, the fish is a little too burnt and the rice a bit undercooked. The miso soup turned out okay though, if a bit bland. Even so, Hisashi throws his arms around him when he saw that Shoyuta made dinner when he gets home from his shift at the radio station. "I knew I married you for more than your body," his husband teases cheerfully. "The tax benefits for one," Shoyuta deadpans as he accepts a kiss. He rolls his eyes when Hisashi gives his but a squeeze. "Make any sort of wifey comment and see if I ever kiss you again." His husband laughs before heading to the bedroom to quickly change before dinner, emerging in a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie that Shuta's pretty sure belongs to him. Hisashi's hands clip his hair back, and how his husband gets his hair down for its stiff updo so quickly will be a mystery that Shoyuta will never try to solve. A soft smile crosses Shuta's face, which is as sappy as he'll get at home. The blonde brightens though and gives him another kiss before heading to get drinks for dinner. Usually, Hisashi takes the lead in terms of the conversation. He chats about his day, the students, the radio station, the heroes at his agency, and will show Shoyuta pictures of random stray cats that he saw throughout his day. Because he knows the kind of man that he married. Tonight, however, Shoyuta takes the conversational lead after the two just bask in the silence of each other's company for a couple of minutes. Given both of their jobs, they just need those few minutes of being together in the quiet without the threat of something burning down around them. Still, he needs Hisashi's insight. So after those few silent moments of them eating and decompressing after their various days, Shoyuta catches Hisashi's eye. "Does anything about Midoriya seem off to you?" he asks Hisashi, whose brow furrows. People think that Hisashi isn't perceptive given his loud personality both in and out of costume. The voice hero, however, makes sure that they think that. Usually because when he DJ punches them in the face, it's more of a surprise. Here's how Shoyuta fell in love with Yamada Hisashi, over strategy sessions and shared grief, over building each other up again and sharpening each other's mind. Yamada is smart. He's probably one of the smartest people that Shoyuta knows. People see someone loud and bouncy, dressed like a glam rocker punk and grinning all the while. They think that they have present mic figured out. It couldn't be further from the truth. Hisashi, himself, was a logical ruse of a person and Shoyuta loves him terribly and irrevocably. Hisashi blinks, his brow dips into concern at that. He has a soft spot for Midoriya, Shoyuta knows. It's not as obvious as All Might's, but Shuta's known Hisashi for half his life, he can tell these things. Why do you ask? He picks at the slightly brunt fish under the gaze of his husband, mouth tugging downward into a frown. Nedzu and I are setting up the pairings for the final exams. Something about the kid has been bothering me the whole term. He wants to pair Bakugo and Midoriya together, but something doesn't feel right. Normally, I would have looked into my suspicions a while ago, but Hisashi takes his hand. Shoyuta feels himself relax under the familiar weight. He makes himself meet that bright green gaze. The blonde finishes his thought for him, but villains and life and everything else. So now it's all come to a head. I have a week to figure out the problem child. If I can't find a good reason why he and Bakugo shouldn't be partnered together for the final, then Nedzu's decision stands. Pending teacher approval. I've put in the request for access to his unrestricted file. But you're better at people. You can pretty good when it counts, Shoyuta. A smile blossoms across his face, green eyes bright. But I understand what you mean. Hisashi untangles their hands and considers his bowl of rice for a moment. Midoriya has been nothing but a good kid in my class. Polite, eager to learn. He's also anxious and doesn't like being the center of attention. But he's fluent in spoken English, so when the others are practicing, I usually have working on more grammar-related topics. He's sharp, though I think he's been making sure that he keeps himself out of the direct spotlight. Concepts he definitely knows he'll get wrong later. He's in the top 5 academically, but he makes sure that he's not number 1 or 2. Even though I think he could definitely be in either spot. He's clever, For someone who wants to be a limelight hero, Midoriya does have issues being the center of attention. Or, at least, when the attention is consciously focused on him. Though, oddly enough, Midoriya doesn't seem to mind during fights or in the heat of the moment. It's like when he's aware of the attention does he turn into a stuttering wreck who tries to hide behind Ida, who is taller and bulkier and makes a good human shield. Shoyuta may have done the same thing with Oboro's clouds as well. Not that he would say it out loud. Shoyuta is going to have to talk with Yagi about adding, PR training into the foundational heroics class, isn't he? He can talk in front of the press, but there's a good reason he went underground. Vultures, all of them, and if he has to deal with HMZ on the regular, then he would actually start carrying around an EMP to short out their equipment. What do you think about the anxiety? He asks, pulling himself from his reverie. Family trait probably. I met his mom once, Hisashi answers succinctly, raising his hand when Shoyuta turns a look at him because this is the first time he's hearing about this. It was before the sports festival, so I honestly forgot about it until now. Nice lady, but definitely has the same kind of anxious vibe as Midoriya. He's the spitting image of her though. Where? The bakery near the radio station? You know, the one that makes those little cat pastries that you think are adorable but would never admit it out loud after that time Tensei made a notification tone out of you saying the word. The BSTRD still has it as his notification tone, too. Shoyuta thanks whatever creation force there is in the universe that Ida isn't at all like his older brother. Just another tick into the Tensei was adopted column. No, he doesn't care that the engine quirk runs in the Ida family or that Tensei looks like his mother. Maybe he'll hint the theory to Todoroki. Rumor has it that he's a little conspiracy theorist. Do you remember if she said she went there often? An eyebrow ticks up and Hisashi's mouth twitches upward, teasingly. Or are you going to try to ambush Midoriya's mother? Because I know you hate formal parent-teacher conferences, but that's kind of why they were created, show. Parent-teacher conferences were the bane of Shuta's existence, and he tries to limit the need for them as much as possible for his own health and tenuous sanity. If I call in Midoriya-san for a conference, then she'll tell her son. And then the kid will be a nervous wreck, try to figure out why I want the conference, or some kind of bull-headed combination of the two that will probably resolve in property damage and another inevitable gray hair. So you're going to run an op on the listener's mother? Not a full-scale one, Shoyuta says as he sips his miso soup. Maybe he needed to add more salt? It really was bland. Just enough to manufacture running into her so I can have a one-on-one conversation about her son and make sure she won't tell him about it. Hisashi has a look that reads to Shoyuta as, I can't believe people think you're rational to the extreme, you ridiculous human being, before moving the conversation along. Well, heads up, she's more of a crier than Midoriya is. I told her that her son is popular and well-liked in the class, and I think she almost flooded the bakery. I'll also keep an eye on the little listener this week during my class, see if I can't add a little more to the investigation. But he seems like a nice, if a bit nervy sort of kid that tries not to stand out too much in settings that are not the sports festival or villain fights. There's nothing really more to say on that, is there? So they move on to other topics, more importantly, cat pictures. Excellent. Shoyuta patrols that night, which is not different from most of his nights. His schedule is rather predictable during the semester, which makes his paranoia itch at that. Being predictable is not good for anyone's health, after all. He pauses, tells himself firmly that no one is currently out to get him more than usual, and decides to change up his patrol route. One of the beautiful things about being independent is that he goes wherever he wants. Right now, for once, he has no active open criminal cases. His night looks like taking down muggers, thugs, and anyone who doesn't understand the meaning of the word no. He also, after handing a groper over to police, reminds himself to make sure Mineta is attending those SXL harassment classes. Normally, Shoyuta would have expelled the little pervert from the first harassment claim. Despite increasingly dwindling potential, the kid's uncle is on UA's board of directors, which is all very political and makes Shoyuta break out into a rash while thinking about it. This makes the expulsion process trickier, and that's the next headache to handle following Midoriya. If Mineta didn't shape up soon, then Shoyuta was just going to file the paperwork and let Nezu handle the fallout. It's been a while since Nezu fought the board of directors into SBMSN. Well, not too long, but Shoyuta would like to see them continually punished for forcing Bakugo to be chained up after the sports festival. At the very least, Shoyuta would rather move Mineta down to general education and bring up Shinso, especially since Nezu is still lobbying for the dorms. No way is he letting Mineta live in the same building as the 1A girls with his current behavior. 4 hours and about 6 apprehensions into his shift, Shoyuta feels, not great, but the tension has lessened. He perches on the rooftop of a nearby building for a breather and to check his phone. Hisashi sent him a good night text about an hour ago. Yagi, as a thank you for subbing for him, sent him a picture of a particularly fat cat whose fur on the top of its head looks like a toupee. Nemuri has a 3-page long chain about her latest date. Why she thinks he would care about that, Shoyuta has no idea. He's dismissing his group chat notifications. Why was he in so many, when he hears the door to the roof opening behind him? Shoyuta turns, not expecting a fight, but a civilian that he'll need to assure that yes, he's a pro-hero, not a creep that likes to hang out on rooftops. Instead, however, he freezes as he sees Midoriya balancing 2 mugs of steaming liquid. His hair is held back by a headband and he's wearing a huge wild pussycat hoodie along with his feet jammed into those red sneakers. I thought it was you, Eraserhead, he greets, shifting on his feet. Midoriya, Shoyuta replies, why are you up? It's a school night and frankly the kid should have been in bed a while ago. Not that Shoyuta has any room to judge, giving his own sleep habits when he was Midoriya's age and currently. But Shuta's always been more of a do as I say, not as I do sort of person. I was talking to a friend in America. She's in college, studying Quirkus science, he replies, face flushing red. I was going to bed when I saw you. And you brought me a drink? It's an unexpected kindness. Though, perhaps not that unexpected given Midoriya's nature. Shoyuta may have issues with the kid's self-sacrificial tendencies and his worrying tendency to break himself in pursuit of his goals. What he doesn't have an issue with, though, is Midoriya's heart, which is as immense as his strength, maybe even more so. Problem Child has one of the biggest capacities for empathy, for kindness, for compassion that he's ever seen. Shoyuta can admit that he envies it at times. I figured it would be nice. It's hot chocolate? The good kind that my mom makes when is sad. He says the last part absent-mindedly before turning bright red. Red enough that Shoyuta feels a flash of worry that the kid may pass out from the blood rush. Midoriya, however, appears all right as he stutters out the next response. And not that you care about that. Or are sad. Just, he shifts under Shuta's gaze. Thanks, he takes a dark green mug from his student. The other one is an all-might one so faded that the red is more of a pink. Shoyuta rightly assumes that's his. So this is your building? It is. Are you patrolling the area? I mean, of course why you are, B but there's no case in the area? B because sometimes mom works late. And if there no case I'm working. I just picked this area for the week. It's a sudden decision on his part, but the opportunity is too perfect for him. Midoriya nods thoughtfully. His brow furrows as the muttering starts. Shoyuta drinks the hot chocolate, which is good and probably the expensive kid from actual chocolate shavings versus the powdered mix. It's not too sweet. All in all, he has to commend Midoriya-san for her taste. Makes sense considering Eraserhead is an independent underground hero. Rather than signing up for an underground agency, he can set his own cases, hours, and patrol routes along with not having to worry about filling a quota like agencies imposed. Although it differs from Limelight Dash. You know your stuff, Shoyuta notes, pleased not that his voice shows it. Normally, most of his students don't really know the nuances of underground heroics until his lesson on the subject. Midoriya's head snaps up and the shyness returns. Always found heroics interesting? I wanted to be a hero since I was a kid. And you know how I can get? Even when I probably should have given up, I didn't. And not that you need to concern yourself such things, Eraserhead. Shoyuta didn't answer. Even when he probably should have given up. What exactly did that mean by that? He thinks back to his previous expulsions. He wishes those kids have a third of Midoriya's dedication to heroics. Maybe they would have actually be able to make it UA. Dedication is important, he replies instead, taking another drink. Midoriya blinks at him, looking a little thrown. He always looks thrown when he thinks Shuta's offering him praise in any form. Like he's not used to any adult giving him such things. Shoyuta finishes the hot chocolate and hangs Midoriya back the mug. Thanks. And make sure TDK keep warm. It's still not too hot in the evening yet. Our recovery girl will give you that face. That face. That's not mad. I'm disappointed. I honestly prefer W when she yells. Shoyuta knows exactly what face Midoriya is referring to and winces under his goggles. Go to bed, problem child. His student nods and heads to the door. Be safe out there. Then he disappears inside. With the taste of chocolate lingering on his tongue, Shoyuta notes the building on his phone. As his investigation into his student continues, Shoyuta wonders if another midnight talk will be better. Midoriya is the type to come up time and again with hot chocolate and that nervous yet determined disposition to make sure that he was alright. Midoriya also goes out of his to avoid adults with any issue that he may have. He twitches and fidgets and shies away, keeping his eyes on them. Midoriya makes sure to be aware of where Bakugo is in the room, tenses himself when he feels the blonde's eyes on him. Midoriya acts like his own life is an acceptable sacrifice to be made to save others. Midoriya protects people, his fellow students to all might. Midoriya is kind and compassionate. Midoriya is smart but tries to hide it. He brings hot chocolate to a teacher that he has a fraught relationship with because it's cold and Shoyuta was on patrol. Shoyuta leaps through the air. He feels half-drawn conclusions swim around his head and he hates it. He feels like he has a half-completed puzzle that he's trying to solve without looking at the picture. So start at the corners and then work inward. He hears Oboro's voice whisper in his head, the dark of the night dredging up old ghosts. The blue-haired boy loved doing stupid challenges like solving a puzzle upside down or playing board games blindfolded. The long familiar grief stirs a little, an old ache in Shuta's heart that will never really go away. Oboro, he thinks, would have loved Midoriya. He would have loved most of this class. They probably would have loved him back just as fiercely, begging for embarrassing stories of high school years and wanting to dive bomb from his clouds to give Shoyuta a heart attack. The thought prods that emotional scar, making it flare up a little sharper. Shoyuta turns his thoughts onto other topics instead. He stops on the roof when he hears his tone for Nedza go off. Permission granted for access to Midoriya Izuku's unrestricted file at UA. Well, that's one issue solved then. Shoyuta feels his shoulders relax at it. He tries to push thoughts of Midoriya's eyes on the rooftop out of his head, and the casual mentions that set the something's not right alarms ringing in Shuta's head. He sighs and rolls his shoulders. Tomorrow he'll look at Midoriya's unrestricted file. Perhaps things will look a little clearer then. Until then, Shoyuta still had a couple more hours left of his self-imposed patrol to handle before he could go home and crawl into bed with his husband. Pushing all thoughts of the problem child out of his head, Shoyuta takes a deep breath, lets loose his scarf, and continues on with his patrol. Shuta's day begins as it always does. His cat BSRD landing with pinpoint accuracy on his kidneys, yowling for food. In response to this demand, he curls tighter under his comforter, not even wanting to see what time it is. It was always 2 early o'clock. Hizashi, the a-hole, is in the shower, singing along to a song playing on his phone. BSD continues to yowl in time with Hizashi's singing. Today is already making Shoyuta want to crawl back in bed, even though he hasn't left its safe confines. BSD makes his displeasure known, right near his face. Defeated as ever by his fat cat, Shoyuta crawls out of bed and shuffles to the kitchen with the smug BSD trailing after him happily. He feeds BSD, gets the coffee brewing, and squints in the morning light. The world feels peaceful, despite the usual rude call to consciousness. Shuta's body aches, but not in an overly bad way. Hizashi is safe. BSTRD is content. His students, as far as Shoyuta knows, haven't run amok in the night to do wanton property damage and/or vigilantism. He'll get access to Midoriya's unrestricted file today, which will hopefully clear up Shuta's questions. Shoyuta feels Hizashi hug him from behind and leans into the touch. Everything feels as good as it can get in Shuta's world. He should have known that it wasn't going to last. The day takes a sharp nosedive when Shoyuta approaches his classroom door. Someone is yelling, probably no, definitely Bakugo. He sighs and opens the door firmly, making Aoyama, who is sitting in his seat and doing needlepoint it looks like, jump. Shuta's eyes scan the room. No one looks injured, thankfully. Nothing had escalated to physical violence. He turns to the far side of the room where Bakugo looms over Midoriya. Kirishima's hardened arms hold firm around the blonde as he pulls him back. Midoriya stares down at his desk, which now has 2 perfect handprints burned into it, face blank. Ida stands in front of his friend with Todoroki flanking him. Uraraka has her hand on Midoriya's back, peering between Ida and Todoroki to glare at Baku. What? Shoyuta asks, voice sharp over apathetic, is going on? Sensei. Ida straightens, impossibly stiffer. His hand up to karate chop with emphasis. Uraraka-chan asked Midoriya-kun about his thoughts on the hero Scatterstar's debut. Bakugo became annoyed with Midoriya-kun's tangent and told him to shut up, using his quirk to burn Midoriya-kun's desk. Ida glares at Bakugo, who bares his teeth from his place in Kirishima's arms. Todoroki moves in front of Midoriya more, eyes narrowing. The temperature of the room drops sharply. Shitty Deku just keeps on muttering all the demon time. Bakugo growls. It was bothering me. The iffy creep always does that because it pisses me off. Midoriya's knuckles turn white, but he continues to stare down at his desk. His eyes never move from the handprints. He looks not like himself. He looks like a doll. Expressionless and emotionless. This is a learned response. The sice wrong, Shuta's gut chants at him. It's how Deku-kun thinks, Bakugo. Uraraka snaps from behind Ida and Todoroki. You're literally the only one it bothers. Even Jiraiya doesn't mind it, and she has the best hearing out of all of us. Everyone turns to Jiraiya at that, who casually shrugs. Her eyes, however, look at Midoriya and seem to soften a bit in concern. She says, Midoriya doesn't mean anything by it and he tries to keep it down if he knows I'm feeling overwhelmed, hearing-wise. He actually had some good suggestions that's not really important right now. Shoyuta closes his eyes, breathes in for 4 and out for 7. Okay, time for damage control then. Right? He says, opening his eyes. Bakugo, detention, a week for unsanctioned quirk use in the classroom. You can help Power Loader clean up the wreckage from the support kids after school. I also want a 1,000-word essay about property damage and why heroes should avoid such acts due Saturday. Only Maijima knows the true depths of Shuta's suffering. His students give him just as many gray hairs. Bakugo reels back at that, like he wasn't expecting to be punished at all. Shoyuta stares at him, daring him to say a word otherwise. I warned you on the first day of school, boo. If you read the UA student handbook, then you know. The first instance of unsanctioned quirk use in a classroom is a warning. The second is automatic detention. It gets worse from there. I suggest you do a thorough reading later. The blonde grinds his teeth before shrugging off Kirishima's hands. Fine, he hisses out, dropping into the seat in front of Midoriya's, whose face is still that strange and sickening doll blankness. This is wrong. Yeah? No, that's going to fly. Actually, Shoyuta says before Bakugo could get settled. You're switching seats with Todoroki for the day, but maybe some space from Midoriya will do some good for both of you. Ida, Heirozu, if any of the other teachers ask, tell them I did the swap. He waits for their assenting nods. With the danger past, the students head to their seats. Bakugo stomps to Todoroki's desk as the red and white-haired boy switches Bakugo's former desk out for Midoriya's ruined one with Ida's help before settling down as well. Shoyuta makes a note to get a new desk brought in during lunch. Quirks occasionally destroying desks are relatively common at UA. There's always a spare at the ready to be brought in. Midoriya, meanwhile, stares at Shoyuta like he's never seen him before. It's bomb because it shows something other than that blankness. He jumps when the desks are switched, but doesn't say anything. His green eyes are wide, knuckles no longer pale, but he looks like the world has been thrown off its axis. Shoyuta wonders just why Midoriya is looking at him like this. He did his job, what any teacher is supposed to do in this situation. What any teacher in UA would do in this situation. No one abides by bullying at this school. Bakugo's and Midoriya's surprise at action and punishment from him has that worry flare even more than seeing Midoriya's perfectly blank face. He notices it. What is it? Didn't Bakugo and Midoriya know each other before UA? Shoyuta casts the thoughts aside from now and turns to his class. Clearly, we need to do more training on negating property damage when using your quirks, Shoyuta intones. Go get your gym uniforms. Kaminari groans and with that whatever tension from the early outburst lifts. Training done and his students safely in the care of Hisashi, Shoyuta heads to the design studio to inform Maijima of Bakugo's presence that afternoon. He pulls down his goggles the closer he gets to the studio in order to protect his eyes from any explosion that could occur. You never know with the support students, who have a bracing philosophy of, an explosion a day keeps the doctor away. Granted, Shuda's own students are a bunch of little weirdos. He doesn't have any room to complain. As he prepares to open the door to the design studio, he hears cursing on the other side. It's enough of a warning that Shoyuta tucks and rolls out of the way as he hears the bang and the small-ish explosion as the doors burst open. He sees the girl with the pink dreadlocks that drove Ida insane during their match at the sports festival sprawl out in the doorway. She's sooty and grinning in a way that makes Shoyuta very, very glad that she's not in heroics. He may have tried to resign. Hatsum, Mima says, sounding like he needs a good stiff drink at 10 in the morning. Shoyuta understands that urge, despite not being much of a drinker himself. I'm begging you. Please. Give me like 30 minutes without an explosion. Hatsum cackles, sounding like a mad scientist from those terrible pre-quirk horror movies that Hisashi like. It's the mother of invention, Power Loader Sensei. Just as he debates whether or not to leave and come back later, Hatsum notices him. She leaps up to her feet. Her goggled eyes are on Shoyuta, more specifically his capture weapon. He steps back before she can paw at it. Capture weapon, she whispers to herself. Elegant in its simplicity with carbon fibers and steel alloy, but could it be reinforced? Or electrified? Please don't, Shoyuta says tiredly. It works for me. 10 million has a theory that you have a minor secondary levitation quirk. Hatsum continues as she bounces on her feet. Is that how the weapon floats? Because I think it could be nanotechnology woven into the metal. Maijima, the prince he is, comes to get his wayward student. Hatsum, leave Aizawa-sensei alone. He doesn't want any updates to his gear. The girl sighs dramatically. Boring. If you want some electrified brass knuckles, then let me know, Goggles-san. Maijima buries his face in his hands as Hatsum goes back into the classroom. Aizawa promises that at the next staff gift exchange, he'll buy the man some quality alcohol. Maybe a spa day. Only they know the truth depth of the other's suffering when dealing with demonic children. Sorry about that, Aizawa. Everything okay? Todoroki didn't burn through another costume, did he? I thought we finally got it right for his flames. I need to talk with you, Ma, Shoyuta says before Maijima could go on a tangent. Bakugu has detention with you for the next week. Unauthorized quirk usage during class along with minor property damage to a desk. I thought cleaning up the design studio would help. Bakugu? The angry exploding kid that the board had tied up at the sports festival. Shoyuta still wants to wring the board of directors' collective necks over that brilliant decision. He nods. Yes, he was involved in an altercation before class with Midoriya. Hopefully, cleaning up after any explosions will make Bakugu think twice about using them in my classroom. You always did have a sense of poetic justice, Eraser. Maima sounds bemused. I'm surprised you didn't expel him. Bakugu has potential, but he needs to get his DMN temper in check. What happened with 10 million? Hatsum demands, poking her head around the corner. Her goggles are up, revealing her bright golden eyes. Is he okay? I offered to make his costume explosion-proof. That's right. Hatsum was on Midoriya's team in the cavalry battle. Shoyuta didn't know that the two of them remained friends after it. Midoriya is fine, Shoyuta answers, looking at the girl. Hatsum eyes him before nodding. There's an opportunity here. Are you friends with him, Hatsum? The girl beams at Shoyuta. 10 million and I are in a mutual beneficial partnership. He said that I can be his exclusive support designer when he becomes a full-on pro. Sometimes, he gives me an ideas for future babies as well. He knows a lot about quirks and pushing them in interesting ways, which means more interesting babies. I keep telling Power Loader Sensei to snipe him from heroics. Shuda's wearing his goggles, but he thinks the look that he gives Maijima conveys his feelings on the subject. I can't steal a heroic student, Hatsum, Maijima sighs. It sounds like they've been having this conversation on and off since the sports festival. Not with that attitude you can't, she says brightly. Anyway, 10 million's great. None of the usual ego of someone with a super powerful quirk. He also appreciates the true brilliance of my babies. Shoyuta nods at that. Good to know. Thanks, handsome. The girl heads back into the design studio. Maijima turns to Shoyuta. Send Bakugo here after classes let out. I'll have a lot for him to clean up. A couple of crashes ring out. Maijima sighs and takes a deep breath in. He and Shoyuta share a look of deep understanding. I should go handle that. Hatsum. No. Hadasum, yes. Yeah, Shuta's definitely glad that he's not in charge of the support kids. But wasn't enough money in the world to pay him to deal with that daily headache. Maijima was a saint. As far as Shoyuta knows, he, Hizashi, and Nedzu are the only ones that know that he's looking into Midoriya. Frankly, Shoyuta wants to keep it that way. Sooner or later, he'll have to talk to the other teachers that have him. He's trying to figure out how to do so without involving Yagi. The thing is, and Shoyuta will only admit this on pain of death, he likes Yagi. He still hates All Might because the perpetual, frozen-in-place smile makes him want to break out in hives. Also, he thinks that having a single pillar is a stupid FING thing to do. People are fallible. Look at Endeavor. He's number 2 and a major a-hole. Given the way Yagi is going, he's going to be number 1 soon enough, and he doesn't even want to think of the societal implications of All Might leaving the heroics industry because it gives him a headache. Either way, Shoyuta likes Yagi. Because without the heirs of All Might around him, Yagi is someone that Shoyuta could see himself being friends with. He's naive, sure. But he has a dry sense of humor, and on subjects unrelated to teaching, he's pretty smart. He holds a lot of respect for everyone, and follows the golden rule of not being a major douchebag. The man is just a terrible teacher though. He also has a special relationship with Midoriya. Nothing untoward, of course. Shoyuta probably would have killed the symbol of peace himself otherwise. He's pretty sure that Todoroki is convinced that All Might is Midoriya's father. But if Yagi finds out about Shuta's little investigation into his student, he'll tell the kid. That's why he's trying to avoid it. Otherwise, he would have gone to Yagi to get a lot of his questions answered. He might even still do that once he knows the sort of questions that he should be asking here to begin with. At lunch, Shoyuta sits at his desk in the teacher's shared office and takes out a jelly pack. He watches Yagi for a couple of moments, reading what looks to be a cheap paperback romance novel and eating his dietary-approved foods for a person with barely a stomach. His eyes also look suspiciously wet as he reads. He cries at the endings, doesn't he? He seems like the type. Yagi! The blonde skeletal man jumps, slams the book shut, coughing blood into his handkerchief. Yes, Aizawa-kun? Do you have any more doctor's appointments this week? If you need me to cover again, I will. Plus, those appointments take most of the day. Shoyuta will have ample time to handle talking with his colleagues without worrying about it getting back to All Might and thus Midoriya. Tomorrow, actually. But after then it'll have all calmed down. Thank goodness. It's a wonder I still have blood left in my body. I'll handle the foundational heroics training then for my class. Thank you very much, Yagi says with a skeleton grin. I really do appreciate it, Aizawa-kun. I apologize that you and Ken-kun have to keep covering for me. He looks so shamefaced that Shoyuta feels a flare of guilt of using the man's situation to aid in his investigation. He stamps it down though. He's never been good at comforting people. That's always been more of his friend's area of expertise over the years. Still he tries. It's illogical to apologize for your health issues. These appointments help you. Your health is important, Yagi. Yagi blinks. His eyes look ever more wet at that. Emotion. Shoyuta has reached his yearly quota of tears by being Midoriya's teacher these past couple of months. And there's still more of the year to go. Thank you, Aizawa-kun. I think I needed to hear that. Shoyuta nods and heads to his napping corner before Yagi does something like try to hug him. The room where the unrestricted records of the UA Hero Course students, present and past, is actually more like an underground vault. Nedzu has actually upped security around the records following USJ, so it takes them 10 minutes and Shoyuta possibly signing what's left of his soul away in order to get to the door. All the records are on paper. 2 people are needed to get into the vault. Nedzu and the teacher requesting access. There is a quirk dampener around the vault. Shoyuta will not be able to leave or take pictures of the file. It's immediate grounds for firing otherwise. If someone not allowed tries to break into the vault, it lights up hotter than possibly the sun and incinerates everything inside. You know the rules, Aizawa. Nedzu chirps beside him. I'll be back in about 3 hours. If you finish earlier, then get in contact with me so I can escort you back up. Shoyuta nods. Out of all the teachers at UA, the various heroics homeroom teachers have probably done this the most often. He steps inside the room and the lights flicker on. Nedzu disappears to go and get Midoriya's file. It takes a grand total of 3 minutes, leaving Shoyuta alone with the documents. All right, kid, Shoyuta mutters under his breath as he looks at Midoriya's nervously grinning face clipped to the front. Let's see what we've got. He barely gets past the first couple lines on the first page. Name, date of birth, quirk activation date. That's where he stops. Midoriya got his quirk the day of the goddamn entrance exam. Of course, he FING did. Shoyuta feels almost incandescent in his rage. If the room itself wasn't suppressing his quirk, he's very certain that he would have activated erasure out of sheer emotion. He hasn't even looked at the other parts of Midoriya's file. Because that's the only thought he's had bouncing around in his head. Midoriya got his quirk the day of the goddamn entrance exam when he destroyed a zero-pointer and turned 3 of his 4 limbs to goddamn soup. Midoriya has only had his quirk for months, not even a year. No wonder he didn't have control over it. Why didn't the kid tell him? Why didn't his mother? Why didn't Nedzu? Someone should have said something. Otherwise Shoyuta would have expelled a kid who only recently got his quirk. A kid with heroic potential gone because Shoyuta didn't have all the goddamn information. He would have done Midoriya's training entirely differently. He would have handled the kid differently from the word go. Scratch that, he is going to do Midoriya's training entirely differently when he finishes this whole mess. He hasn't even heard of a quirk coming in this late, and he's had late bloomers in his class before. Shoyuta searches his brain because there has to be someone somewhere who may have had a quirk activate as a teenager. The oldest that he heard was some kid in Portugal, who got his quirk at 10. And that's only because he never had a pineapple before. Usually, if a quirk is late coming, then it's because the activations are weird. That's just how it goes, but that's why quirk counselors exist to help figure out the quirk activations and help kids handle it. Midoriya's strength enhancement is powerful, but something should have shown up before then. There should have been some sort of indication of it. Someone should have registered something when he was a kid. It doesn't make sense. There's a doctor's note, which theorizes that Midoriya's body was attempting to protect itself from the power until he built up enough muscle. It sounds plausible, perfectly passable even. Anyone who hears that explanation and knows what kind of damage that Midoriya's quirk can do will just nod and say, yeah, that makes sense. Then they would go back living their lives with barely another thought to it. Shoyuta, however, is not that sort of person. People look at him and think that he's a weird mixture of lazy and exacting. When, in reality, he digs and digs and digs until he thinks that he's going to see the metaphorical molten center of the earth, and then he keeps digging more to get his answers. Aizawa Shoyuta is relentless in pursuit of a goal, whether it be training the next generation of heroes or patrolling for villains. In Shuta's paranoid brain, he hears the imaginary alarm bell flare to vicious and clanging life. It's a dual-purposed alarm bell when it all comes down to it. The first alarm is If Midoriya's quirk didn't emerge until the UA entrance exam, then the kid grew up, essentially, quirkless. Shoyuta keeps up with various statistics of anything that could impact his students, even tangentially. Quirkless statistics are, well, a horror story in and of themselves, especially in Japan, which has one of the highest rates of quirked individuals in the world. So, now that's a host of possible trauma and other issues for Midoriya. Shoyuta definitely plans on having words with Nedzu. It certainly makes Bakugu's behavior on the first day and every day since toward Midoriya makes so much more sense. Shoyuta now has the sneaking suspicion that Bakugu is Midoriya's bully, not rival as previously thought. He's definitely making that seat swap between Todoroki and Bakugu permanent now. He hasn't even read the rest of the file and he feels like his entire perception of observations of Midoriya have been turned upside down. Meanwhile, that second internal alarm bell rings. Midoriya should not have a quirk. How did he get one? There's a ghost story in the world of underground heroics. Do you remember it, Shoyuta? Shoyuta takes a deep breath and flips to the next page of the file. The alarms in his head do not cease. In fact, the deeper in Shoyuta gets, the more seem to appear until his entire body feels like it's vibrating in time. A cacophony of imaginary noise that drowns out the entire world except for his own breath and the beating of his heart in his ears. Wrong. 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 The way this child was treated is wrong. And he's going to make it right because Aizawa Shoyuta is a hero, after all. Shoyuta arrives home late that night with rage still coursing underneath his skin. He breathes deeply in the warm evening air that teases of summertime. Hisashi doesn't deserve the anger that he feels at Nezu, at Yagi, at this whole situation. Though his husband will, no doubt, figure out that something is bothering Shoyuta and get it out of him. They've known each other too long otherwise. No, Shoyuta knows that conversation is incoming. Hisashi reads him better than just about anybody. They've been through too much together. He wouldn't insult his husband by trying to hide such things from. He just doesn't want his quirk to rage activate during it. Or for himself to get even more upset about the situation than he already is. And he's already pretty DM and upset. Shoyuta feels like he has a whole laundry list of concerns regarding his problem child. With each new thing he learns, the list grows longer. He also feels like there's a conspiracy in the wings at UA High. Motherfucker, Shoyuta whispers to himself viciously. He feels a bit better after verbalizing his annoyance out loud in a cuss word. Why was I not informed about Midoriya's situation? Shoyuta hissed at Nezu the moment they left the confines of the vault where the unrestricted files are kept. His quirk manifested mere months ago. Someone should have told me. Would it have mattered? Nezu asked placidly. Midoriya-kun proved himself to you. Of course it matters, he snapped back, anger bleeding through his tone slightly. Nezu is supposed to be smarter than this. I saw a kid with a powerful quirk that had no training and that kept on breaking his limbs. Never mind the fact that a quirk manifesting that late is so rare I've never heard of it. But I would have adjusted Midoriya's training to account for it. Remedial classes at the very top of the list. Has the kid even seen a quirk counselor? Nezu stared at Shoyuta, head tilted to the side. It's animal-like in a way that Nezu rarely lets himself be, except with those that he trusts, like Shoyuta. Are you certain of that, Aizawa? Or would have you seen a liability in the field? And expelled him on the spot? Shoyuta bristled. His expulsion rate was high, of course. Not even factoring the students that he allowed back into the hero course after expelling them, those who proved themselves worthy to be let back in. The small size of the third and second year classes more than proved that many of those expulsions stuck. Nezu never had a problem with them before. He knows Shoyuta is a taskmaster. More importantly, he understands why. Nezu knew Shirakumo along with other students and heroes gone too soon. Heroics is a dangerous industry. And UA and other heroic school walk the fine line between making heroes and making child soldiers. Not that the Heroic Public Safety Commission understands that much. He knows why Shoyuta does what he does. He knows it, so why is Midoriya different? You never argue with my expulsions before. You know that I also don't give them out of hand either. Midoriya proved to me during that assessment that he had an ability to think to along with that power. At the very least, the remedial training could have given him his full cowl technique quicker. At the very least, he wouldn't have harmed his arms so badly. Or do I need to call Recovery Girl so she can list how badly he injured himself at the sports festival? Again. Midoriya's right hand will never be the same again. His fingers will remain ever so slightly crooked. He still wears the compression sleeve on his arm. Shoyuta's stomach twisted. It could have been prevented, maybe. If he had known. They stood at an impasse. Shuta's anger simmered under his skin and Nezu stared up at him, thoughtfully. There were other considerations as well, the principal said finally. Ones that made sense to me at the time. Though, perhaps, I was looking at the wrong picture. Something flared in Shoyuta at that. The only picture you should have been looking was the welfare of a student with a reckless streak a mile wide and a quirk that destroyed his body the first time he used it. I don't know what kind of games are being played here, he said, voice quiet and still in an attempt to keep his emotions in check. But his safety, their safety, it always must be first. Nedza hummed. Perhaps you are right, but you don't know the full picture either. And you're not going to tell me, Shoyuta stated, frustrated and a little hurt. Nedza looked up at him. There was a glitter of something in those beady black eyes. No, but I won't stop you from figuring it out. Just make sure that this is a path you want to go down, Aizawa. Think of it rather like the story of Pandora and her box. The conversation was clearly over with that cryptic statement from the principal, who left Shoyuta with his frustrations, anger, and, curiosity in equal measure. Hizashi takes one look at Shoyuta when he returns home and pulls him into a hug. Like a cat, Shoyuta lets himself go to a near boneless state in his husband's arms. He buries his face into Hizashi's shoulder, which always feels like the safest place in the world to him. After standing there for minutes maybe, Hizashi lets Shoyuta go to the bathroom to wash his face, and then there's dinner. It's ramen from their favorite little stand 3 streets over. Hizashi clearly is psychic to Shuta's moods. Midoriya's file that bad? Hizashi asks after they eat in silence. The nice, gentle morning they had feels so long ago. He didn't get his quirk until the entrance exam, Hizashi, he replies, exhausting bleeding in. Nedzu and I had a discussion. And there are bigger forces at play than a kid getting their quirk at 15. He likened it to Pandora's box. Well Hizashi swears in English. I didn't even know they could come in that late. The latest I heard was that pineapple kid from like Spain or something. It was Portugal actually. Shoyuta viciously swirls the broth in his bowl after sharing that little fact. Now, he could get the other things off his chest that he couldn't discuss with Nedzu. But, yeah, my thoughts exactly. And that's not. The kid's file is all over the place. Grade-wise, some scores are bottom of the barrel, others are totally average. It's completely inconsistent with the grades he's getting at UA, which are consistently high across the board. Let alone what the teachers wrote about him. Do I want to know what they wrote? Hizashi asks, wincing a bit at the look on his husband's face. Shoyuta takes a deep breath in for 7 seconds, out for 4. He's not here to get mad at Hizashi when his husband hasn't done anything. Disruptive, combative, a distraction to the other students, antisocial, a liar, amongst other things, Shoyuta repeats. There is a trend, but I notice that it gets worse around his 3rd year of junior high, around the time of entrance exams. None of his teachers wrote recommendation letters. Instead, he went the hero route. All Might wrote Midoriya's recommendation letter to UA. Which is allowed, of course. It can be either 2 recommendation letters from past teachers or 1 from a pro hero or someone in the heroics industry. He knows that Tensei penned 1 for his brother, if only because the other man told Shoyuta. And All Might's letter was a glowing reference, indicative that the pair knew each other before Midoriya set foot in the school. It explains All Might's behavior on the first day of classes, watching Midoriya during the quirk apprehension test. Unlike the teacher complaints, All Might talked about Midoriya's determination, drive, valor, kindness, compassion, and mind. He showers praise on the boy's strength of character. Why didn't All Might send Midoriya in on the recommendation exam then? No one argues with All Might. Between that, Midoriya's high score on the written exam, and the rescue points? Yeah, Shuta's not surprised that Midoriya got into UA, despite the less than stellar praise from past teachers. Hizashi leans back, a frown on his face. Shoyuta. It sounds like teachers hated the little listener. And there it is. The crux of the matter, what Shoyuta has been thinking but didn't say out loud to Nedzu, to himself. Instead, he slumps forward, feeling very tired. Yeah. It definitely sounds like that, huh? He and Hizashi know quite well what it's like to be hated by teachers. To be seen as your quirk and only your quirk rather than a person with thoughts and feelings and hopes and dreams. Itfangs kiss, but it's something neither of them ever forgotten. It's what they carry with them as heroes and as teachers. A promise to make sure no kid ever felt as they once did. Shoyuta thinks of Midoriya. His skittishness around adults, how he shrinks in on himself when he thinks he will get negative attention, the surprise on his face when Shoyuta intervened earlier today with Bakugo. Then there's the word in the back of his head because if Midoriya's quirk truly didn't manifest until age 15, then that means that people probably thought he was quirkless. It rings throughout his skull, again and again. Quirkless. 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 He and Hizashi finish dinner in silence. In all honesty, and Shoyuta does try to be honest with himself, he probably shouldn't be out on patrol. He's still out of sorts from reading Midoriya's file, still angry and wary. He thinks of what Nezu said about Pandora's box and caution of digging too deep into Midoriya. What sort of secrets does his students have to be like and so? But Shoyuta, if nothing, excels in compartmentalizing. According to his therapist, it's fine in small doses, so long as he confronts his sheet sooner or later. He also really wants to hit something. He promised Hizashi before he left that he would only handle muggers and the like tonight. But his husband understands the urge of getting out and doing something when all you feel is powerless. He just asks that Shoyuta tries to be safe. Shoyuta also hoped that he would catch Midoriya again while out on this half-butted patrol that he's doing. It's definitely the main draw of the night for him. He seemed more open to speaking with Eraserhead the pro hero rather than Aizawa-sensei the teacher last night. There's some sort of distinction in Midoriya's mind. Shoyuta is definitely pragmatic enough to cultivate that to get some answers from the kid. But he has several days to get things in order. If Shuta's going to open a Pandora's box in his life, one that is centered around Midoriya Izuku, then he has to work quick to get the kid to be open the idea of trusting him. He does not want Bakugo and Midoriya paired together for the exams now more than ever. He patrols the area he did last night, takes out a couple low-level criminals, but nothing too major. Not with the residual rage simmering under Shuta's skin. Still he feels a bit more settled when he lands on the rooftop for Problem Child's apartment complex. He takes out his phone again, flicks through the messages and waits. Sure enough, 15 minutes. After he arrives, Shoyuta hears the door to the roof open. "I'm guessing that you really like that hot chocolate," Midoriya says as he shuffles forward. He's wearing a different sweatshirt, this time for Hawks. No trace of his stutter, which Shoyuta takes as a good sign. There's even a slight smile on the kid's face. Shoyuta has to hide his own in his capture weapon. Midoriya's headband has little cat ears on it. "It's pretty good," Shoyuta agrees as he accepts the offered mug. "It really is." Shoyuta should find out the brand. It would be nice to have a sweet thing he and Hizashi could agree on. Midoriya flashes a nervous smile before joining him. Shoyuta sips his drink as he watches the kid sip and fiddle with his mug. Clearly, he wants to broach something, but in typical Problem Child fashion, seems to caught in his own head about it. Shuta's more than willing to wait until the kid's ready to talk though. Sometimes, you have to let a kid come to you in their own time. "Thank you," he whispers. Stopping Kaken F from yelling at me. "You don't need to thank me. It's my job." Midoriya fidgets at that. He turns his face away from Shoyuta. Is Kaken really going to have detention? Shoyuta remembers being 15 and angry at the world, telling off some hero course kid who was picking on a management student when Nezu, the heroics teacher, found them and gave the hero course kid detention. "Is it really going to stick?" he demanded. He played this game before with teachers. It never stuck. So is UA going to be different or more of the same? And there was something like understand in Nezu's eyes. "I'll make sure of it." Shoyuta knows how Nezu felt now, hearing that question coming from Midoriya's mouth. He has several more days of it with Power Loader. No one should be using their quirk like that in the classroom. At least not purposefully. Accidents happen, of course. But it's clear he was doing it on purpose. Schools have policies to discourage it in classrooms, but, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that they are followed. Shoyuta thinks of his own youth, being chased through back alleys and bloodied knuckles. He thinks of taunts and jeers and an aching loneliness that never went away until you. He looks at Midoriya, whose shoulders are around his ears, fingers fidgety and nervous. He looks at this kid, thinks of warnings of Pandora's box, and makes a choice. Do you amend the consequences? Many of my teachers didn't do so, though. Especially when a student has great quirk for being a hero. Then, suddenly, they would turn a blind eye or conveniently go deaf, especially if they were bullying kids with a less great quirk. Or me. Midoriya freezes at that. Slowly, he turns to face Shoyuta with wide green eyes. But Shoyuta shares from where he's perched, fingers wrapped around the warm mug. I still put myself between the bullies and the other kids. I could erase their quirks. And I didn't care if they called me names or if I got in trouble with the teachers. And I got in trouble with teachers for existing. With a quirk like erasure, no one liked me or wanted me around them. Between that and my personality, life before UA wasn't kind. When I became a teacher, I promised myself that I would be better than what I had growing up to my students. It's an admission of vulnerability and honesty that Shoyuta doesn't often share with his kids. They need stability. They need him strong and unbending, not like All Might. But they need him to be someone that they can look to and believe that things can work out. But he thinks of Midoriya's unrestricted file and thinks of the kid himself and hears the whispers of his suspicions in the back of his head. He knows that Midoriya didn't have teachers to trust or rely on. Shoyuta knows that feeling well, intimately. He never had much reason to trust most adults growing up either. When had he forgotten how that felt? Midoriya reminds him of Oboro. He reminds him of All Might. He also reminds Shoyuta of himself before he had Hizashi or Nemuri or Oboro as well. Maybe that's why, most of all, this particular problem child is a problem child. Shoyuta was a problem child once as well. For the second time in 24 hours, Midoriya looks a bit poleaxed. Like there's been a seismic shift in his understanding of the world and he doesn't quite know how to handle it. So, he barrels forward in that tried and true patented problem child way of his. The words bursting forth swayed by the need to do action more than sharing his pain with his teacher. It's frustrating to me. When people think like that. I like their AR good and B bad Q quirks. Any quirk I think could be great for being a H hero. Biba. Midoriya pauses as if trying to figure out the words he wants to say. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And get it. I got between the bullies too. B because everyone is I'm important. In all my L life, I haven't met as someone who wasn't. And it makes me mad I think. Dish that people can be so cruel so casually. There are people who make ch choices and decisions and they're not always great. But people are messy and complicated and amazing. And I want to be a hero because I want to make the world a place that could be a little kinder. A world where a hero named Deku can bring hope to who they call worthless. His voice cracks a little on the word. Midoriya's eyes overflow with tears that he scrubs on the sleeve of his hoodie. And I'm so sorry that you went through that. Because it are really FACs. They sit in silence for a few minutes. Shoyuta waiting until Midoriya composes himself before he speaks. And you went through it a lot, didn't you, kid? There's a long pause. Green curls bob in a nod as he sniffles. Yeah. Shoyuta decides not to push tonight. Tomorrow maybe he'll ask about Bakugo. Right now, he'll take the win. Instead, he rests a hand on Midoriya's shoulder and lets out a breath of relief that the kid didn't flinch away from his touch. I want you to know that I'm going to make the swap between Bakugo and Todoroki permanent. Are you okay with this? Midoriya's head snaps up, eyes searching for something on Shuta's face. He doesn't know if the kid finds it, but he nods. Kaken may get mad. Controlling his temper is something Bakugo needs to learn anyway, Shoyuta says. And if your muttering bothers him so much, then it's logical to make the move. Todoroki doesn't seem to mind it. Nor does the rest of the class, but Shoyuta won't bring that up either. Midoriya flushes a little, color blooming across his cheeks. He has to swallow a chuckle. He's not quite as invested in the romances of his students as his fellow teachers are. Do Hizashi and Nemuri sometimes set partner projects to pair the kids who have crushes on each other together like some bad rom-com? Maybe. Shoyuta doesn't know why he married one and has been friends for 15 years with the other. But he can't return them. Or as Hizashi put it on their wedding day, no take-backs. He's really nice about it. He says he feels like he learns something new. Yeah, everyone is. Most people think it's C creepy. B but I've been doing it as long as I could remember. I had trouble speaking as a kid, so dad said tongue twisters under my breath could help. And then it just helped me with thinking, hearing my thoughts out loud. It's the first time Shoyuta has ever heard Midoriya mention his father. What does your dad do? He asks because he's curious. Hopefully, the change of topic doesn't dredge up bad memories. Midoriya brightens a little at that. Shoyuta breathes out in relief because parent issues to varying degrees are a dime a dozen in the heroics industry. And while he can handle them, it's always good to see someone having a halfway decent relationship with a father. Oh, he works in hero merchandise in America. He and my mom divorced when I was 7B because she didn't want to move. But they're still really good friends. He video calls me once a week and comes to visit when our schedules line up. We email all the time. And he sends me a bunch of cool merch too. Especially really limited edition stuff that he helps design. He bites his lip and leans forward, smile bright and sweet. He even made a little figurine of me. In my latest costume. It's pretty cool. Was so pleased she has it on display on the mantle. It's a two of a kind. Dad keeps the other on his desk at work. And not that being a hero is about that sort of stuff. Shuta's an underground hero. He knows that there are people that know of him, vaguely. He thinks there are even a couple of stores on Etsy that make merch solely based on underground heroes. He knows this because Hizashi bought an Eraserhead keychain which left Shoyuta blushing and stuttering for a week after. But it's also nice seeing Midoriya. Act 15, almost 16 years old. It's nice to see him turn into a stuttering mess with him over about how cool it is to have his own figurine. It eases something in him to see the kid be a kid. Shoyuta knows his student's heart. You can think it's cool, kid. I remember when Present Mike got his first figurine. He was pretty excited too. Hizashi bawled and sent them to his parents and siblings, who also bawled. The Yamadas are very loud and very emotional. Shoyuta loves them, but he's also way too allergic to that many feelings. It improves, of course, the allergy to feelings. The Yamada family are just that sort of people. Midoriya blinks at that and smiles shyly. He looks at his empty mug of hot chocolate. The silence is more comfortable as Shoyuta finishes his own mug, even if it's mostly cold. Thanks, kid. Stay safe tonight, Eraserhead, the kid says with a smile. This is how Shoyuta would like him to look. He thinks of that purposefully blank face from homeroom. That's the antithesis of Midoriya. He'll do his best to make sure he never has to make that face again. Shoyuta may not be able to protect his kids from villains, not always, but he can well be sure to protect them from each other. He watches as Midoriya gathers the mugs and heads inside before leaping into the night. On another rooftop, Shoyuta sits down and considers his next course of action. Well, more to the point, he thinks of the comparison Nezu made earlier about digging into Midoriya's secrets more being akin to Pandora's box. He's decided to open the box, and he's not going back on that. Shoyuta doesn't think, now that his ire has cooled enough, that Nezu meant it would be a world-ending sort of thing. He thinks that it's a warning from what he's pieced together of his mysterious student so far. There will be things and actions and consequences that people probably won't like. Shoyuta will probably have to face some of the uglier truths of the worlds, not that surprising considering his line of work and how it affects his kids. But the thing about Pandora's box is that hope remains. People don't think that Shoyuta is a hopeful guy. They think him cynical and pessimistic and callous and apathetic. But Shoyuta considers himself hopeful. Cynicism and hope aren't mutually exclusive, he feels. They're complementary. Well, at least, how he views hope and cynicism are complementary at any rate. You see all the shit in the world. All the terror and anger and fear and all the ugly parts of it, even if it's impossible, you do your best to make it better, even if it doesn't work. You still try. Just a little bit. And isn't that what hope is at the end of the day? Trying just a little bit? He thinks of Midoriya's smile and breathes. All Shoyuta can do now is dive in and let himself hope. It also prevails, after all. Shoyuta wrapped up his patrol after talking with Midoriya, heading home where he immediately face-planted into bed next to Hisashi. This means that he got an unprecedented 6 full hours of sleep for a change. He feels almost drunk with how well-rested he feels. He's ready to fight the entire top 10 chart and win. He feels so well-rested as he and Hisashi head to school the next morning. It also significantly improved his mood. Hisashi asked him to rate his anger, saying that it went down from an 8 to a 5 from yesterday. He still plans on avoiding Nezu until they talk again at the end of the week. Usually after one of their disagreements, a couple days apart is good. If only to regroup mentally. Hopefully by then he'll be at a 2 on the angry scale, which is more annoyance than outright anger. Pretty much, it's his normal state of being. On the way to work, Shoyuta sends an email to both Bakugo and Todoroki, letting them know that he's decided to make their desks swap permanent from here on out. It solves one problem of having Midoriya not near Bakugo anymore. After that, he plans the next part of his investigation, so to speak, talking with the other teachers while Yagi was out for the day. He decides to talk with Hisashi later that night, knowing his husband has been probably paying extra attention. 2 full days of observing Midoriya will give him something to work with. The other teachers that Shoyuta will probably need to talk with are Nemuri, Cementos, and Ectoplasm. He debates on approaching Recovery Girl before deciding otherwise for the time being. He just hopes the morning will be a bit calmer than yesterday. For once, the universe decides to listen to Shoyuta and grace him with his wish. He arrives in homeroom to both Bakugo and Todoroki in their new seats. Good they got the email. Midoriya looks a bit more relaxed as well, even flashing Shoyuta a small smile as he steps inside. Bakugo is slumped in the very back row, a scowl on his face, alternating between glaring at the ceiling, the desk, Shoyuta, and Midoriya. He'll have to keep an eye on the kid during foundational heroics. Shoyuta really hopes that he doesn't have to move the kid again. Otherwise, he'll make Bakugo switch with Shuji, putting the blonde front and center where every teacher can keep an eye on him. Jiru, also, won't take any sheet as well from him either. Shoyuta raises an eyebrow when the blonde glares at him, projecting an air of, "Do you really want to fight me on this?" and gets a scowl in return. Todoroki, for his part, looks pleased when Shoyuta walks in. He receives another nod, leaving Shoyuta feeling like he just passed another sort of test from his red and white-haired student. It would be a lie to say that he hasn't noticed the inclusion of Todoroki into Midoriya's friend group after the sports festival. Following Hosu, the other boy stuck even closer to Midoriya, who seemed uniquely qualified at bringing Todoroki out of his reserved shell. The other boy follows like a sunflower follows the path of the sun, helpless to turn away from it. Really, the switch is logical. Hopefully, Todoroki near Midoriya will bring him out of his shell more as well. And Shoyuta has suspicions about how reserved and socially awkward Todoroki is. The way he refused to use his fire part of his quirk. He knows Endeavor by reputation and through a few unfortunate meetings over the years. But here his hands are tied. No one will investigate the number 2 hero, and Shoyuta needs Todoroki to say something to him. Once he handles Midoriya, he plans on tackling Todoroki next. Him and Mineta. Thankfully, the rest of the meddling kids seem to not want to push the fact that the desk swap seems to be permanent. If only to not make Bakugo explode out of embarrassment. It makes segueing into class all that easier. And the morning lesson for ethics of heroism is a pleasant one, in that he gives them a pop quiz and relishes the groans. Shoyuta has to get his amusement from somewhere after all. By virtue of being his friend longer than the rest of the teachers except Hisashi, along with having a break in her schedule the same time as Shoyuta, he talks with Nemuri about Midoriya first. Despite her entire thing, she's one of the sharpest minds he knows and keeps an eye over her students like a hawk. And because Shoyuta is a generous soul, he makes her a cup of tea in offering an apology for the conversation they're about to have. Nemuri has a soft spot for Midoriya as well, who she has described as an adorable little bunny with a dragon hiding inside him after one too many drinks at karaoke night. No, Shoyuta is not going to think about karaoke night. It's a once every 3 months affair for good reason. I'm not helping you hide a body, Namuri says as she grasps the mug of tea that Shoyuta made for her. Not with such a partly bribe anyway. At least get me some cake to go with it. Shoyuta snorts and falls into the chair next to her desk in a graceless heap. I don't need you to hide a body. Well, not yet at any rate, but he knows Namuri would. She's ride or die like that. But I do need your observational skills. Oh, she purrs. Do you and Hizashi need help to spice things up in the bedroom? Because I have some ideas about. And there's the part of her that makes Shoyuta want to crawl into a hole and perhaps never emerge. It's about Midoriya, he says, pinching the bridge of his nose. He already regrets this entire conversation. He can only hope Cementos and ectoplasm won't test his patience. He can only be glad that Snipe isn't one of Midoriya's teachers. That BSRD loves to throw in extra yeehaws to make Shoyuta twitch. One of these days, Shoyuta will snap and shove that stupid hat where the sun never shines and feel completely vindicated for it. Namuri narrows her eyes and tilts her head to the side. He sees that protective flash in her eyes, which promises a villain or a pervert will feel the end of her whip in some uncomfortable places. Shoyuta understands the urge very much. What about Midoriya? She asks, leaning back with her tea in hand. Working to set the final exams for my class with Nedzu, he says. I cannot go into details yet, of course. But the pairing that Nedzu wishes to move forward with Midoriya doesn't sit well with me. Nothing, actually, has about the kid since the term started. I've looked at his unrestricted file yesterday. And I would like your unbiased thoughts on him as your student before I go any further. The thing that Shoyuta appreciates about Namuri is that for all her flirtatious and SXL double talk, when it's time to get serious, she gets serious. She taps the side of her mug thoughtfully for a moment, gathering her thoughts. He's a sweet kid, very excitable. He does well in my class, knows his stuff about art history of heroes. He did a paper for me. It was like 10 pages over on how pre-Quirk-era stories about heroes influenced the aesthetics of the first generation of quirked vigilantes and how those effects are still felt in the industry today. I couldn't even fault him on the brick of the report because, frankly, it was that good. I'm going to use it as an example for how my third years should write their term papers. Shoyuta nods. Midoriya does the same for him. He's trying to get him to be more concise, if only for the sake of people who'll have to read his incident reports. But the dedication and passion shine through in his factually impeccable work. Yaoyorozu has a similar issue as well, though to a lesser extent. It makes it hard to dock him for it, especially with some others' lackluster effort in such things. Namuri continues, but I think that Midoriya has also been hurt a lot. By people in power. He's skittish in a way that reads bad to me. I don't think the kid trusts any adult outside of maybe All Might and, based on conversations I've overheard, his mother. His relationship with Bakugo, I think, has been misconstrued. I know that All Might believes that those two are rivals, maybe even the other teachers do as well, but there's a friendly rivalry and then there's those two. He tracks the Bakugo, have you noticed? He reads his moods and tries to make himself small when it's a bad day. I was thrilled that you decided to separate them yesterday. Frankly, I think that it should have been done a long time ago. That's what I've been noticing as well, Shoyuta agrees, burying his face further into his capture weapon. His unrestricted file was very eye-opening to me. How so? He didn't get his quirk until the entrance exam, he shares. Nedzu knew and didn't tell me. I told Hizashi and I'm telling you because I know you can keep it quiet. I also think All Might is in the know about whatever's going on as well. He wrote the recommendation letter for Midoriya to get into UA. Did you know? The comments from his other teachers are scathing and his grades don't match the sort of performance that you, or Hizashi have noted in class either. Namuri leans back at that, taking a long sip of her tea and looking like she wished she had something stronger in it. So, essentially he grew up quirkless. Yes. He knows Namuri's track record on advocacy. She supports a lot of charities centered on abuse and SXL harassment in the heroics industry. She speaks out about protecting those that society turns their back on. The quirkless are chief amongst those, usually the first. That poor kid, she mutters, looking so sad and small in that moment. I think I'm a little in awe, actually. He probably has the best reason out of us all to go full villain and still wants to do good. Shoyuta doesn't answer because, well, there's really nothing that has to be said about that, is there? The talks with Cementos and Ectoplasm go similarly, even though Shoyuta leaves out information on when Problem Child's quirk emerged. Both agree that Midoriya is a bright and gifted student, dedicated to his work, but does not receive praise well. When he has an issue with an assignment, he tends to handle it himself rather than go to either of them for help. He seems surprised when either his teachers or his fellow students have a kind word for him in class. It's like Midoriya is expecting to punish. Ectoplasm admits with a sigh. I'm glad you're looking into this, Aizawa. I just thought it was because people find me intimidating. It reinforces what Shoyuta feels like he knows already, but he's always operated on the motto trust but verify. In his larger cases, it's definitely helped him out a couple of times. Midoriya has no faith in his teachers. Midoriya handles any issue himself before going to an adult, whether it be facing down a serial killer or trying to figure out how to do geometric proofs. And then there is Bakugo. Nemuri is right. There's rivalry and there's those two. Should have seen a few over his years of teaching. Some are friendly, others were not. Midoriya and Bakugo, however, do not appear to even have a rivalry to begin with. From listening to his class speak to each other during the times he pretends to sleep in homeroom, Shoyuta knows the two have known each other since childhood. A childhood that Midoriya was, essentially, quirkless for. At the end of this, Shoyuta has a feeling that he's either going to be asking for Bakugo's placement in therapy, removal from Class 1A, from the Heroics Department, or from UA in general. Either way, it doubles down on what Shoyuta wants and what Problem Child wants as well. Which is why he doesn't want Bakugo and Midoriya fighting against All Might together. Right now though, he has conjecture. He has observations based on the teachers. But he doesn't think he has whatever Netsu needs from him. There are things that are not connecting for him quite yet. Covering for foundational heroics is easy enough. Unlike last time, Shoyuta has the kids in costumes for one-on-one matches. The sparring exercise is a round-robin style. The winner gets to pick the next challenger and so on and so on. For the first two fighters, Shoyuta decides to do it the simplest way, drawing straws. The short straws are the first two competitors, he says, because that seems to be the fairest way to handle the situation to him. Of course, the universe may have decided to give Shoyuta any easy homeroom, but apparently this doesn't extend to the rest of the day. The universe is cold and uncaring and just is. Still, it's also like the universe has a metaphysical hit out on Midoriya Izuku. But Midoriya and Bakugo draw the short straws. Of course they do. Of FNG course, they do. Shoyuta vaguely believes in reincarnation in the cover all your bases sort of way. Sometimes, however, he wonders who the F he set off or like murdered or whatever for the universe to test him like this. Or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was Midoriya. Of course, Problem Child would carry over that sort of karma from a previous life or something. Either way, someone effed up bad enough for this to carry over to the current life that they're now living. He looks between the two of them. Midoriya fidgets, mouth in a tight and determined line, back tense. Bakugo grins, wild and untamed, like he's thrilled for a school-sanctioned excuse to beat on Midoriya. Shuda's more than ready to stop it there and have them redraw. Let's if he go, Deku. Shoyuta looks at Midoriya's eyes, narrowed, but the kid shakes his head. As if he knows Shoyuta already wants to have lots redrawn. Shoyuta doesn't like it. He should go with his gut here, but he nods. If he wants Midoriya to trust him, then he's going to trust the kid. He will, however, try to mitigate damage. One moment. Bakugo, take off your gauntlets. Ha! You heard me. The last time you and Midoriya went one-on-one. You disobeyed a direct order against using them. We'll not be making that mistake again, especially for something like a one-on-one sparring match. Bakugo growls, but he gets the grenade gauntlets off. Shoyuta would rather them not fight against each other. Some of the tension leaves Midoriya's shoulders, who gives an encouraging smile to his worried friends, before turning to follow Bakugo to the ring. First person knocked out of the ring loses, Shoyuta says as he starts the match. And if I see anything I don't like, then I will be ending it and you will listen to me. Wise, Aizawa-sensei. Bakugo rolls his eyes and nods, which is probably the best Shoyuta will get in this shitstorm of a situation. Go! Bakugo blasts toward Midoriya, who activates full cowl and jumps into the air in a crackle of green lightning. Midoriya's strategy against Bakugo, Shoyuta admits, is pretty clever. Rather than go head-to-head, the smaller student uses avoidance. He jumps around, up and over from one end of the ring to the other. The blonde's blasts get more powerful the more he sweats, this is true. It's also harder on Bakugo's wrists and arms. Yes, he could get 1 or 2 real powerful blasts against Midoriya along with the minor ones. But explosion is a quirk. Every quirk has a drawback. Midoriya understands this and his opponent. Even if he can't wait out the drawbacks to explosion's overuse, it had the dual purpose of frustrating Bakugo, who let his anger get to him. Bakugo was in the top 5 of the class for a good reason as well. He had great control over his quirk, though Shoyuta had some suspicions on how that was achieved, was smart in fighting his battles, and was quick on his feet. He also knew Midoriya as well. Stop jumping, shitty Deku. Spar with me. Or are you a coward? Midoriya lands with his expression fierce. He's unbending. That sort of battle calm zen has settled over his student. It really is night and day from his normal personality. I'm not a coward, Kakin. Then fight me. Bakugo roars as he blasts across the ring. Midoriya again jumps into the air, but this one is tighter, more controlled. He lands behind Bakugo before the other boy can turn around and he pushes Bakugo out of the ring. Shoyuta tamps down on his grin. He has to give it to the problem child. He knows how to clinch victory in unconventional ways. For once, it didn't break his body as well. Midoriya wins, he says. Pick your... Bakugo roars, turning around with his hands up as if he wants to blow off Midoriya's face. Shoyuta activates his quirk before the full impact can be unleashed and wraps his capture weapon around Bakugo, who wrestles in its confines. Uraraka and Ida rush over to Midoriya, who is trying very hard not to tremble. Todoroki, Shoyuta notices, moves to stand near close to him rather than head to Midoriya to glare at Bakugo. We're turning those few days left of detention into 2 additional weeks, Bakugo, Shoyuta informs him. Do something like that again and you'll be expelled. In fact, you're done for the day. Go run laps around the outer perimeter of the building to cool off. No quirk. It wasn't a spar. Bakugo shouts back. Deku. Shoyuta feels exhausted because this feels like the sports festival all over again. And he still wants to wring the collective necks of the board of directors for making them chain the kid up to accept his DMN medal. The only objective was to get the opponent out of the ring. Midoriya did so. Not every fight you will be in as a hero will be fists or support items. He outthought you, Bakugo. Now go. Shoyuta releases Bakugo, who growls, before jogging off. Midoriya watches him go before meeting Shuta's eyes. There's that indefinable emotion in them. Disbelief? Maybe it's all 3 of them. Either way, he stares at Shoyuta with those big green eyes. He meets them. You okay, problem child? Midoriya jumps before nodding. Wait. I'm alright, Aizawa-sensei. Then pick your next opponent. The rest of the spars go well after that. Midoriya is eventually beaten by Uraraka through a clever application of her quirk via some martial arts learned from Gunhead. When class ends, he sees Kirishima approach Bakugo with a frown on his face. He's the only one in the class who seems to be able to get the explosive teen into some semblance of calm. But it shouldn't be on him to do so. Kirishima has his own stuff to worry about. Bakugo's anger is definitely becoming an issue in the classroom setting. Shoyuta makes a report to Hound Dog, asking if he can set aside some time to feel the kid out. It's something he should have done months ago. At the very least, it's the first step of getting Bakugo into anger management classes. He emails it over the counselor and makes sure to CC Nedzu on it as well. He leans back in his chair and stares at the computer. Shoyuta thinks of Midoriya, who looks at him with wide and surprised eyes whenever he does the bare minimum of care for a teacher. He thinks of Nemuri's observations and Bakugu's sense of entitlement. He thinks of being a child himself with a power that people wrote off as a bad or weak, the lack of care given to him as a result by the adults in his own life. He thinks of teachers who told him to stop making things up when the other kids bullied him. He thinks of being a kid with more smarts than sense, with determination fueling him to get between the bullies and their victims, with a deep burning desire to prove himself. Midoriya Izuku and Aizawa Shoyuta are more alike than either of them would ever think at first glance. He opens up Midoriya's basic file, which has the names of his junior high and elementary school, and drafts emails to the principals of them as well about meeting with them the next day. It's time to get some real answers. Even though Shoyuta feels like he's going to hate what he finds. But, for far too long, there's been a line in sand. Midoriya or Bakugu? Quirkless and quirked. And it's more than time that someone picks one over the other. Shoyuta picks his side and hits send. Slow cookers, Shoyuta believes, are one of the greatest inventions known to mankind. Yes, he is willing to fight someone on this. You just throw a bunch of ingredients into the pot, let it simmer for like 8 hours, and come home to a delicious meal. It was, aside from the rice cooker and coffee maker, the most invaluable tool in the Yamada Aizawa household. Shoyuta starts the rice cooker and tastes the curry that Hizashi threw together to cook in the morning from the slow cooker. Warm enough for Shuta's love of spice, but not too hot that Hizashi will have to chug his coffee creamer in search of sweet relief. Shoyuta stretches out on the couch with BSD joining him, settling on top of his stomach to nap. Shoyuta tilts his head back, eyes half closed, ready for his own catnap before the rice cooker goes off. Of course, even with the long day, he still got a decent amount of sleep the previous night. Well, a decent amount of sleep for him. Either way, the whole affair becomes an exercise in pointlessness. He reaches for his phone instead, fingers tracing the plain black case as he opens his apps. There's an email from Maijima, who is fine with Bakugu's extended after-school stay in cleaning up the design studio. Hatsum's, apparently, been in fine form, making lots of work for him. There are 2 other emails from Midoriya's elementary and middle schools respectively with the principals agreeing to meet with Shoyuta tomorrow. Finally, an email from Shinso, who appears to have gotten over his stomach flu and will be back in school. Shoyuta replies to his protege first saying that they will not have physical training until next week. Mainly because he knows that the kid will insist that he's fine when he's really not. Rather than being an empathetic crier, Shoyuta has, of all things, an empathetic GG reflex, which is objectively worse than the crying. He also doesn't want to deal with Shinso throwing up and the ensuing lecture from Recovery Girl. No thanks. Instead, Shoyuta sends Shinso some of the analytical exercises that the Hero Course kids have been working on to make up for their missed physical training. While the kid may no longer be sick, the reply email sounds almost relieved at not having physical training. Shoyuta thinks that one of his students may actually learn something like common sense after all. Did he think that person would be Ida? Yes, he did. Then Ida went off on a revenge mission against Stain in Hosu. This is around the time that Shoyuta resolves to pay more attention to this class of demon children. So Nemuri told me that you talked with her today, Hizashi says over dinner. I talk with Nemuri multiple times a day. But I don't want to hear her suggestions for our Hisei life. Hizashi snorts at that. She was talking about the little listener. You've had a bit of time to really observe him since I brought it up, Shoyuta says, looking at his husband. What do you think? I think Midoriya has trauma related to authority figures in his life. He responds succinctly. He tries to make himself small, unnoticeable versus acting out, which is the route that I went. No one looks at pro-hero present Mike, gregarious and charming, and thinks that he was bullied as a kid. They would be wrong though. Just because voice is a powerful quirk. It doesn't mean that Hizashi had an easy time in school for it. His control over his ability was shaky at best, rendering a couple members of his family hard of hearing. Shoyuta has had a crash course in various brands of hearing aids worn by those Yamadas. Teachers are fickle with those sorts of powerful quirks as well. Hizashi was encouraged not to talk in class. Not to mention about a case, about 20 years old, of a teacher forcing a muzzle on a student with a voice-based quirk. It's something of a landmark case, making such treatment highly illegal. No one, except Shoyuta and 3 others, know that the nameless muzzled student in the case was Hizashi. So if anyone could understand trauma related to authority figures, teachers especially, it would be his husband and Shoyuta himself. Rather than making him small, it just made him louder and more of a showman. If they wanted him to shut him up, then Hizashi would do the opposite. Those showman tendencies were eventually redirected into present Mike. Between that and therapy, Hizashi was a lot better than he was when he was a kid. Shoyuta himself went down the small, unnoticeable route. Right up until he made himself noticed, usually by fighting a bully. Speaking of bullies, I think Bakugo was Midoriya's bully when they were growing up. Hizashi lets out a tiny hiss at that, not in his file? I haven't seen Bakugo's unrestricted file. But based on my own observations amongst others, I think we misread the situation between the pair. Though I'm guessing that since Bakugo has the perfect quirk for heroics, we'll see a clean record. In the kids that Shuta's expelled over the years, many of the ones with those perfect quirks tend to have clean records and a bad attitude. For a select few, the expulsion, the death of their dream, is enough to sort of wake them up and put in the work to change for the better. For others, they don't change and either stay in Gen Ed or transfer out to other schools. Not that other heroic schools would want anyone who has been expelled from UA though, no matter the quirk or the supposedly clean record. Other hero schools know the tricks just as well as UA does. But without a psychological assessment or a clear black mark on applicants' records, then there isn't much to do about the problem. Unfortunately. Still, it's a symptom of a system that sets Shuta's teeth on edge. How quirks determine a person's worth in the end. Or, at least, that's how it goes in society's eyes. There are other considerations over power in many pro-heroes' opinions. Not that school boards or the Heroics Commission would actually listen to them, of course. God forbid, they actually listen to someone who works in training young heroes, rather than being enamored by power. It's part of the reason why this class is, mostly, a breath of fresh air to Shoyuta. Their love and support toward one another, toward others, it's nothing short of astounding really. It's definitely something Shoyuta plans on continuing to cultivate. Empathy, intellect, cunning, kindness, these go hand in hand with being a true hero. With this class? These kids? Who knows? Maybe they will see the system and force a change of their own. They're certainly stubborn enough for it. Now, he just has to make sure that they survive UA in order to do so. Do you think that you'll expel him? Hizashi asks, bringing him back to reality. And isn't that the question of the hour? Or, well, becoming one of the major questions of the hour anyway. Shoyuta sighs, running his hand through his hair. I don't know. Mineta, definitely if he doesn't shape up on his perverted ways by the end of training camp, then he's getting the boot. I don't care who he's related to on the UA board of directors and Ned'z'll back me up. Bakugo, on the other hand, he's a bit more social than he was at the beginning of the year. He'll work with Kirishima at least. He still has potential. Hizashi hums thoughtfully. But there's his temper, attitude, and Midoriya. Yeah. I'm sending him to Hound Dog for a session. Hopefully, he'll recommend anger management for the kid. Usually, a kid could opt out of such a recommendation, except for Hero Core students. Not if they wanted to participate in hero classes. Maybe getting Bakugo the tools to deal with his anger is what he needs along with DSPN. Because the kid does have potential, but he's also in need of a wake-up call as well. Anyway, how did that interview with Edge Shot go? He asks, changing the topic to work that doesn't involve his hellions. Hizashi, proving to be the best husband, runs with the change of topic quite happily. I'm starting to think that you're seeking me out, Eraserhead, Midoriya says 15 minutes after Shoyuta lands on his rooftop. There's barely a stutter in the rather bold statement from his student, which is new. You keep giving me hot chocolate. Shoyuta responds with a shrug as he takes the mug. His student huffs out a laugh, eyes bright in the moonlight. I can give you the brand name. I bet Yamada-sensei would like it, Midoriya answers with a sly grin. Shoyuta doesn't choke on his hot chocolate, but it's a near thing. His and Hizashi's marriage isn't well known amongst the students. What do you mean? Problem Child raises an eyebrow, but he hears the challenge in Shuta's voice all the same. I pay attention. You and Yamada-sensei are good, careful. But I see the way you two look at each other. I saw the way he was after USJ. It wasn't that hard to figure out. People in love, he flushes and shrugs. They look at each other different is all. He sounds a bit wistful, Shoyuta thinks. Given the looks he's seen Todoroki give Midoriya, he's unsurprised. Shoyuta huffs out something that could be a laugh instead. Well, congratulations then. You got extra credit in both mine and mixed classes for the next term. It's been a long-standing promise between the pair. When a student figures it out and approaches one of them about it, then that kid will get extra credit in their classes for the term. Since this term is ending, they'll have to roll it over to the next. Hisashi will be thrilled though. The kid jerks back, turning to him with a confused expression on his face. It. None of our students ever caught on to it, or at least, never outright asked. I think you're the first. So we said that if it ever happens, then that person would get extra credit for the term. Since this one's almost over, we'll roll it to the new one. Midoriya stares at him with wide eyes. And no one caught on? Shoyuta grins. Nah. Congratulations though. Mike'll be thrilled. You're already one of his favorite students. The problem child looks down at his mug of cocoa. His cheeks turn a bright red at the statement. It's true though. Hisashi is fond of Midoriya. Shoyuta leans back to sip his. He eyes the kid before deciding to slowly broach the Bakugo topic. Good work today with your spars. You think so? I wasn't being cowardly with Kaken. Shoyuta sighs. Bakugo has a very narrow idea of what a fight will entail. It's more than just two people punching each other. And in heroics? Things are rarely going to be fair in his sense of the word. You use your capture weapon to make sure no one can touch you, Midoriya says, looking out at the landscape of buildings and power lines. And when they get close, you rely on quirkless combat through the use of your quirk. But mostly it's stealth and sneak attacks, surprising them and knocking them out before they even know you're there, right? It reminds me a bit of a snake in the grass. Not that's a bad thing, of course. No one notices the snake until they strike. That's a pretty good breakdown of his style. The metaphor isn't that bad either. Shoyuta feels his mouth stretch into a grin. Now that's impressive, kid. The blush on his student's cheeks turns a deeper red. There's something pleased about it though. I like heroes and analyzing them. There are a couple forums on underground heroes as well. From what few clips there, plus what I've seen, it makes the most sense. It's really impressive, Eraserhead. And that was impressive what you did against Bakugo. Midoriya, do you know why I almost expelled you on the first day? Midoriya bites his lip. Because you saw a student with a P-powerful quirk and the A ability to not control it? Right. And do you know why I decided otherwise? I had potential. Shoyuta nods. And you showed that by thinking and adapting to your situation. That's what I look for with heroic potential. You showed that today as well. Sometimes, you can't run into a situation head-on. You need to think it through instead. Your mind, more than your quirk, Midoriya, is your greatest asset. Green eyes snap up at that. A slight quiver in his voice. Why you think so? Shoyuta nods. The kid searches his voice for a long moment. Would you think that if I was Q-quirkless? He asks, voice small and shaky. Midoriya doesn't know that Shoyuta has seen his file. He doesn't know what Shoyuta knows. Even so, Shoyuta has an answer, and it would be the same even if he didn't know what he knows. One day, even with the dropping rates of the quirkless population, he knows that there will be someone that will never know the feeling of power that lives in their skin trying to get into UA, trying to become a hero. Even if he didn't have all this information, Shoyuta still knows exactly what he would have said anyway. A quirk is tool, he says simply, almost gently. He feels like this may be what gets Problem Child to trust him, so he needs to be honest here. Like every tool, there are pros and cons to them. I won't lie and say that a quirkless person wouldn't have some disadvantage, but so does everyone. Not that people ever want to say it, too enamored with the power that's within them. But, to answer your question, you have your compassion and your kindness and your empathy. You're smart, Midoriya, and come up with sound strategies. Even if you never had a quirk, I think that you would still be my student. I think that you would have been a hero, even quirkless. Midoriya stares up at him. He's perfectly still, so still that Shoyuta is actually a little bit concerned. He reminds Shoyuta of a computer that is being restarted. Then, the kid suddenly moves, setting the mug down, before throwing himself around Shuta's waist. Shoyuta barely has time to brace himself because for a relatively short kid, Midoriya is heavy with muscle. He buries his face into Shuta's chest and sobs. They're half hysterical and are unlike Midoriya's other tears. No, these sobs remind Shoyuta of someone who really thought they were going to die but didn't. All of their shock and joy and fear is being released all at once. Shuta's never been good with crying people. He's gotten better with them over time, but he doesn't really do comforting. At least not as well as Hisashi does. Still, he gently puts a hand on Midoriya's back and rubs circles into it like he remembers his mom doing when he was little. Eventually, the kid quiets down and pulls away from Shoyuta, wiping his eyes on his sleeve and pulling out a pack of tissues from his All Might hoodie. He seems so exhausted by the crying jag that he's forgotten to be embarrassed, like he would sometimes get. "I'm sorry," Midoriya whispers. I didn't get my Q quirk until the E-entrance exam. So I was going to try A and be the first Q quirkless pro. And I guess I need to hear that. Thanks. Shoyuta knows all of this, of course. But he knows this is a big deal. This is Midoriya actually trusting him, even a little bit. This something Shoyuta wants to encourage. "Thank you for telling me, problem child," he says, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry that I didn't know about this sooner. I would have tried a different method of teaching you. But for only getting your quirk so recently, you've made amazing progress." There's a blush on the kid's face, but something else. Something like pride or a glow. Like he wants to enjoy getting praise from an adult that he feels isn't obligated to praise him. "Tomorrow though we'll talk about adding some training to your schedule. Don't look so crestfallen. You'll be with Kaminari and Aoyama too." "I honestly should have done this sooner," Shoyuta says. "I apologize again that I didn't." "You don't have to apologize to me, Eraserhead," he responds. "I do," he reaffirms. "Because you needed help and I should have found a way to get you it sooner, Midoriya. And because when someone makes a mistake, they apologize and move on. They try to be better for it, learn from it. Just because I'm the teacher here, it doesn't mean that I'm infallible." The kid swallows again, looking like he wants to cry again, but he's too exhausted and out of tears to do so. Shuta's awarded with a tremulous smile instead. "You're a pretty great teacher," Midoriya says with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't think I ever had one like you before." And, oh, doesn't that land a sickening sort of feeling in Shuta's stomach? "You should have, Prob Midoriya," he says. The kid grabs the mugs and stands walking over to the door. Like he's just done for the night and wants to walk away and sleep. Shoyuta feels that he got some of what he wanted. Not all of it. He still didn't get confirmation on Bakugo's bullying, but Midoriya trusted him. "I like it when you call me problem child," he finally says, looking down at the door handle. "It's like when Uraraka-chan calls me Deku. Or when All Might calls me my boy. It's nice." Shoyuta thought the same thing when he was called problem child as a kid himself. It was the person that made it feel right over everything else. Shoyuta feels something warm curl in his chest at that. The sick feeling from Midoriya's previous admission washes away. These kids are going to be the death of him, but really, there's probably no other way he would prefer to go except in bed surrounded by his loved ones. "Good night, problem child." "Good night, Eraserhead. Stay safe." Shoyuta launches into the air after Midoriya closes the door behind himself. He thinks that the kid may finally trust him, at least a little bit. Shoyuta doesn't get 6 hours of sleep, but he does get 2, which is about the average in his book. Hisashi must have fed BSRD before his shower as the cat is not trying to attack Shuta's kidneys. Instead, Shoyuta buries his face into his pillow and grabs his phone. His phone vibrates near his head and he sighs. Smushing half of his face into his pillow, he grabs his phone and cracks open his eye. With a few careless swipes of his thumb, he opens his email. There's an email from Bakugo's parents, either unhappy about their kid's detention or Hound Dog sending them an email regarding the counseling request, asking about setting up a conference with him. He groans into his pillow because parent-teacher conferences are definitely one of the circles of hell. And Shoyuta only sort of believes in the afterlife in a cover all of your bases just in case sort of way. Either way, he hates them so much. But he does have to take this one, of course. At the very least, if Bakuga's parents can get on board with Shoyuta, then maybe they can help Bakuga more. Maybe. He responds, setting up a time tomorrow before school that fits with their schedules. Bakuga's parents, that should be interesting. Well, that and loud. Either way, Shoyuta gives up sleep as a lost cause until he can nap before class at school. He rolls out of bed and pads to the kitchen, scratching his stomach. Coffee pot working away, Shoyuta takes out his phone when something catches his eye, a set of red Converse sneakers. Hizashi must have ordered them. Because, as memory serves, the pair that he wears when just running down to the konbini finally fell apart after 10 years. And the shoes sparks something Shoyuta noted and forgot to look into. Those goddamn shoes. He's mad at himself. Shoyuta utterly forgot all about them. To be fair, though, it's been a long couple of days. Something as inconsequential as his students' shoes would slip his mind with the things he was juggling as he looked into Midoriya's past. But, still, what is it about those shoes? Problem child and the junior high kid, the one who said Midoriya's shoes meant he could be trusted on some level. It seems so long ago, but it's only been a couple of days. Shoyuta resolves to get a picture of Midoriya's shoes. His costume is equipped with a microscopic camera. It wouldn't be that difficult to get an image to send to Madame LaRue, part-time fake psychic and full-time underground hero costume and support technician. Like so many people in Shuta's life, she's odd and makes him wonder just how he attracts these types of people to him. With a plan set, Shoyuta turns to get the toast ready for his and Hizashi's breakfast. Homeroom is different this morning. Yes, his group of demon children are the same as ever. After they handle all classroom business, Shoyuta curls into his sleeping bag for some needed rest, while his students either talk or catch up on homework. It's a perfectly typical morning, except not. And like most of things this week, the difference is with Problem Child. Safely cocooned in his sleeping bag, Shoyuta realizes that the kid has been meeting his eyes, rather than looking right over his shoulder in attempt to appear so without doing it. He also, for lack of a better term, looks less nervous as well. It's a small yet stark difference to Shoyuta. Like the confidence that Midoriya carries when facing down a villain and diving headfirst into a heroic exercise has spilt over just a little bit in his day-to-day life. The events of last night, apparently, meant that the kid trusted Shoyuta enough to relax around him. It's a bit humbling and a relief at the same time. He felt a similar surge of victory when Shinso smiled at him or the first time Todoroki used his fire in a class exercise. Or when any of his hellions show something resembling common sense. Maybe he has become a dad to a bunch of teenagers at the age of 30. Shoyuta positions himself to get a solid 20-minute catnap in before he has to teach his hellions. Today's lesson? How to save someone you philosophically disagree with, because that's what heroes do. And maybe throw shade at them if they're a real a-hole. Needless to say, he needs to rest up for that because he has a feeling shade will be thrown. Inwardly, he congratulates himself because he has a photo of Midoriya's shoes now. Shoyuta timed his arrival to when Problem Child arrives and was able to get a snapshot of them on his button camera. Now he has to send the images Madame LaRue and mentally, emotionally, and spiritually prepare himself to go see her. He had to anyway because he needs new smoke bombs and she makes his support gear. Shoyuta settles into a doze with the knowledge that his class is all right and unharmed. No one is blowing anything up or plotting to topple a government or whatever teenagers do. Right now, all he can hear is quiet chatter and Kaminari's gently sobbing over his algebra assignment while Siro tries to help him without letting him copy his homework. He hears Midoriya laugh at something, bright and happy, followed by Todoroki's huff and Uraraka's own bright bubbling giggle. It's a noise that he hasn't made in a classroom setting before. While he's sure this class is going to give him gray hairs, he also feels contentment. They're safe and happy and everything is all right. Shinso hunts him down around lunchtime. He looks pale, but it's the sort of pale of someone who was sick for a few days and just recovered. Shoyuta raises an eyebrow, gets a ginger ale from the fridge, and pushes it toward him. Shinso collapses into the chair next to him and takes a sip from the soda. The two of them stare at each other. Sometimes, looking at Shinso, he feels like he's looking at a reflection 15 years ago. And other times? Other times he feels like he's looking at a ghost. Boro and Shinso have the same smile. "Glad to see that you're alive," he tells his protege, turning back to his work. "You don't know that," Shinso says. "I could be a ghost, possessing my body through sheer spite at this point." Some people feel things like joy or happiness or being well-rested, Shoyuta answers without missing a beat. "Or so I'm told anyway." "Huh," he responds, mouth twitching. "Don't know her." "Why are you here, brat?" he asks, looking up from his work. "You emailed Haru like a billion times to make sure I was okay. So, I promised them that I would come by since apparently you missed me so much." "It was 3 times. Shoyuta buries his face into his capture weapon to hide his blush, but there's a grin on his student's face. "They thought it was sweet that you were so worried," Shinso continues on, the traitor. "So, I think you're getting thank you cookies." Shinso's older cousin, Shinso Haru, that he lives with is a baker and Shoyuta is not going to turn down free food. His brief couple months homeless in his early days of heroics has always made him very grateful for any and all free food. "Nothing too sweet," he directs instead. "Haru makes dark chocolate espresso cookies that are as black as your soul," promises his student. "And I think I'm missing a page on the analysis work that you sent me? I just wanted to make sure I had it all." He rolls his eyes but holds out his hands as Shinso passes the folder over. He's missing a page, which is a good catch. On the papers, there are already notes and half-formed plans. They're on their way to being decent plans even with the missing information. He ignores that, feeling like pride in his chest as he prints out the missing page. "Thanks," Shinso says, rubbing his eyes. "You need to go see Recovery Girl?" 6 sleeps, the kid says with a roll of his shoulders. "I slept probably more than I did in a month, but my body is still tired. And it is CKS. I'm fine though." Shoyuta winces, knowing how he feels. "Don't push yourself. I've heard this talk. Don't worry. I'm not like Midoriya on that level." Shinso has heard stories from around the school and from Shoyuta himself about the chaos that makes up Class 1A. At the center of it is the bone-breaking problem child that has occupied a lot of Shuta's thoughts the past few days. "What do you think about Midoriya?" There's a blink from his protege at that, a flash of confusion, before it settles into thoughtfulness. "He's a weird kid," is what Shinso eventually settles on. At Shuta's encouraging nod, he continues. "I still don't know how he was able to break his finger to break himself out of my control. But he looked like he saw a ghost or something when he snapped out of it. He's not like anyone with a powerful quirk that I've ever met. You know how most teachers treat them, right? Like they were some kind of gift from the gods or whatever, rather than just lucking out in the genetic lottery. I would think that his nervousness was an act, but..." He shrugs. Silence stretches between them for a minute before he continues on. "He stares at me sometimes, like there's something he wants to say but is too scared to. Probably because of my quirk." "It isn't," Shoyuta assures, thinking about what he's learned about Midoriya. What he remembers saying in class during the strategy exercise. Problem child loves quirks. He probably has a million questions and suggestions, but probably doesn't know how to approach you about it. He's poorly socialized. A shocked blink basically serves as his protege's answer. "Seriously? Do you want to see his last analysis assignment? 4 pages over the limit and yet technically perfect. I can't fail him even if I wanted to." Another silence settles over them. When Shinso speaks again, he doesn't meet Shuta's eyes. Instead, he busies his hands by playing with the soda tab. "People were scared of me growing up because of my quirk, you know? They bullied me. But not like physically. They just out and out ignored me. It was like I was a ghost. Now I'm not saying that hasn't left its scars on my psyche or whatever. But there was a girl 2 years ahead of me in elementary school. She was quirkless." Shoyuta freezes at that, a knot twists in his stomach. "And they were vicious. Everyone hated her. I mean, I didn't. But I didn't do anything either. I didn't want to make it worse for myself, which isn't very heroic," Shinso sighs, slumping back. Midoriya reminds me of her, jumpy, eager to please, the way he eyes people. What happened to the girl? He asks, having some sort of idea. These stories rarely have a happy ending. Couple kids pushed her down the stairs. I found her, believe it or not. I got the janitor. His protege eventually shares. Her family moved out of the country shortly after. I think it was to, like, Iceland or something. I looked it up. Some countries in Europe, especially the Nordic ones, have a higher quirkless population on average in comparison to the rest of the world. I always felt like shit though. Nothing bad happened to the kids that did it either. The school just swept it under the rug. No one ever talked about her again. I always hated myself a little for not helping. Don't, Shoyuta says. You were a kid, and you were trying to protect yourself. Yeah, but how could I call myself a hero if I didn't try to help before then? He leans back and looks at the bowed lavender head of his protege. Shoyuta lays a hand on his shoulder and waits for Shinso to look into his eyes. You helped in the end. And now, well, now you know better for next time. Some heroes have a story about how their feet moved without thinking about it. Others, though, they have a story about the time they didn't move or didn't act sooner. And how they felt so guilty and full of shame afterward. It'll drive you, Shinso. Because you know that you never want to leave someone behind again. You're already on the path. And one day, who knows, maybe you'll get a chance to apologize to her for not acting sooner. He leans in at this, like he's sharing a secret. But I think that she'll remember the time you helped her over all the times that you didn't. He ruffles the pale purple hair of his protege, who left still looking on the mend but also lighter somehow. Like a burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Aldra Elementary School looks like any other elementary school that should has ever been too. It's a feeder into a local junior high, though some students do go to private schools as well. In turn, Aldra Junior High tends to feed into a series of mediocre to good but not great high schools. Bakugo and Midoriya are the rare exception to, in Shuda's opinion, a less than stellar example of the school system overall. Or maybe he's just projecting his own issues here. He doesn't exactly have fond memories of the time before he hit UA in regard to his schooling. Shoyuta still made sure to wear a small audio recording device for his interviews. Either way, Shoyuta trudges in, past the art on the walls and the background noise of classes. Teachers lead their students through lessons. Though whether or not they actually learn something from them, it's hard to say. The principal, a middle-aged woman named Okada who looks matronly but her sickly sweet smile immediately sets Shoyuta on edge, greets him with a formal bow. He bobs his head back, hating the formalness of such endeavors. I hope that I can help whatever issue you're having, Aizawa-san, she says as sits behind her desk. Shuda's eyes trace around the room, allowing a silence to stretch between them before he decides to break it. It's one, of course. The computer in front of her is about a decade out of date. There's photos of her family on her desk and the file cabinets have messy crayon-drawn pictures from students. He wonders, briefly, if all elementary school principals have the same taste of decoration. It reminds him viscerally of his own elementary's principal's office as well. He certainly spent enough time in it to become familiar with it. When he notices Okada reach for some paperwork, he breaks the silence. She jumps a little in her seat as he does so. I'm the homeroom teacher for two of your former students, Bakugo Katsuki and Midoriya Izuku. I know it's been some years since they had graduated, but I was hoping that you could shed some light into their younger years. The woman lights up at Bakugo's name. Bakugo-kun and Midoriya-kun, correct? I must admit that I was not surprised when I heard Bakugo-kun got into UA's hero course. Always such a force of personality and his quirk, a real leader during his time here. Such a joy to have in class as well. I was not surprised in the least to see him on the winner's podium of the sports festival. Shoyuta internally winces at that mention of the winner's podium. But more concerning is the mention of Bakugo being a joy to have in class. Maybe he was different when he was, like, 6. But he can barely keep a handle on Bakugo most days. While Bakugo could be a great leader, he needs to get over himself before that is even close to happening. And Midoriya, he asks before Okada could sing more of Bakugo's praises. It's equally concerning that she hasn't mentioned his other student once in her little speech. She jumps again, whether it's at the mention of Midoriya or Shoyuta interrupting her he couldn't say. Instead, that sickly, syrupy, simpering smile on her face becomes even more fixed and pronounced. Like if she grins wide even, he wouldn't look too deep into things. He knows that smile though. He's seen it before on some criminals. Like if they grin wide enough, then they can do some serious damage control. It never works. Shuta's never been charmed by such fake things. Oh, well yes, we are very proud of Midoriya-kun as well. A bit of a loner though when he was a child. He always did talk about heroes all the time. It could be very disruptive to the other students. I must admit I was surprised to see him with a quirk of all things. He never manifested it while here. Would it matter? He wants to ask, but Shoyuta swallows the question. He knows the answers. To so many people it does matter. Never mind that it's a fifth of the world's population, that they're alienating for such beliefs. Never mind that 200 years ago a kid like Midoriya would be the norm. Never mind a lot of things, Shoyuta supposes. People just don't care because of some arbitrary expectation on quirks. It's extremely rare, Shoyuta responds, keeping his face perfectly straight. His doctor believes that the power would have killed him otherwise, or at the very least result in the loss of one of his limbs. Another jump of the face at that from Okada, the casual mention of Midoriya's power. He thinks of Bakugo and wonders how differently she would have treated Midoriya otherwise. There's a fine line between having a powerful, heroic quirk and having a powerful quirk that could be seen as villainous. He thinks of Hizashi, muzzled. He thinks of Midoriya with hunched shoulders and blank eyes. He's already tired of these games. This is why they never send him out to play politics or deal with the press with any regularity. I'll cut to the chase, he says instead. I've noticed things about Midoriya and Bakugo that have me concerned. Oh, what sort of things? There's a waver in her voice. Guilt perhaps? She suspects she's been caught. There was an old poem or song that Hizashi learned when getting his English degree. How did it begin? Ah yes, will you walk into my parlor? Said the spider to the fly. Shuta's the spider in this situation. I'll focus on Midoriya since, frankly, he has me the most concerned. Without taking into account whatever he went through at junior high, some of his behaviors are ingrained into him from before then. Long enough that I assume some of these things were learned here when he was in elementary school, when he was a child. He startles at praise or kind words from his teachers or classmates. He doesn't trust any adult to help him at all. He won't look people in the eye dash. Okada jumps in that. He still does that? I tried to handle that previously by making him. He freezes at that. Did she just admit to dash? She sounds like she was trying to make it sound like a good thing. Did she FING touch his student? And how, Shoyuta says feeling far calmer than he is, did you do that? She relaxes, seeming to take his state of tranquil serenity as a sign that he's on her side instead of Midoriya's. I would take his chin and make him meet my eyes. Eye contact is important in polite society. Otherwise people would think he was a liar. He stares at the woman and tries not to activate his quirk. PNG hell. He needs to put problem child in therapy or something. Not that he would trust any adult to handle that outside of a select few. Shoyuta is probably going to have to give the kid therapy or something until he feels comfortable talking with a licensed professional. He takes a deep breath and stands suddenly. Okada startled, scrambling to stand herself. Aizawa uses their height difference to loom over the woman, meeting her eyes. Wouldn't want her to think he was a effing liar about this. So, you thought it was okay to put your hands on a child and do that? This meeting is over. I'd say it was a pleasure, but it really isn't. Except to hear from Principal Nedzu before the week is out. He stands suddenly and leaves with Okada staring after him, face pale. The entire Aldra school system, Shoyuta thinks, as he walks through the halls of Aldra Junior High, is going to have to burn. Full on salt the earth sort of burn. He hasn't met the principal of Aldra Junior High yet, but he can already feel in his bones that this will be more of the same. He saw a wall dedicated to distinguished alumni. It was a short list with Bakugo's name recently added, but Midoriya's is nowhere in sight. So, that already gave Aldra Jr. High one strike against it. He also walked past a classroom where students were just openly using their quirks. This, he feels, explains a lot about Bakugo. Maybe it does. Either way, the teacher in that room is just mentally counting down the day until they can retire. Or they really just don't care about the law. Either way, it's all going to burn. Much like a cat presenting a corpse of a bird to its own, Shoyuta plans on dropping off these schools to Nedzu to raze to the ground. He and the principal don't do such paltry things like apologize to each other when they have heated words. No, they both prefer actions over words. Usually, they just bring each other various opponents to take down as a sort of apology gift. Much better than the standard flowers and chocolates, or whatever it is normal friends co-workers do. Not that Shoyuta has the best frame of reference for such things. This also carries over to his marriage. He and his Ash definitely wouldn't know about average apologies. Their apology gifts were usually cat pictures, coffee, and a day off to spend with each other. "Can I help you?" a voice asks behind him. Shoyuta turns and sees a man in a janitor's uniform with a ram quirk, judging by how the large horns curl out of his head and the shape of his eyes. "I was looking for the principal's office. I can show you where it is. I'm Wada, by the way, Wada Naoki. Aizawa Shoyuta from UA High School," he introduces before adding. "I'm Bakugo Katsuki's and Midoriya Izuku's homeroom teacher." There's a reaction there upon mentioning those names. Wada makes a slightly startled bleeding sound before disguising it with a cough. He then turns to him with a grin. "Oh yeah? How's Midoriya doing there?" "Well, that's surprising." Shoyuta was definitely expecting to hear Bakugo's name and see problem child ignored by the other man. There seems to be only honest interest from the man, so Shoyuta answers honestly in turn. It always pays, in Shuta's experience, to have the service workers on your side. Being polite to janitor or a convenience store employee has made a couple of his cases over the years. Not that Shoyuta is polite, but he does treat them like fing human beings. So, that also helps. He's a good kid and the makings of a great hero, but I noticed some behaviors that I've found troubling, especially with him and Bakugo. Wada's face grows a bit dark at Bakugo's name, and something wavers as he looks around the school. Eventually, once he's certain they're alone, Wada's face firms in resolve as he leans forward. "When you're done with the principal, meet me a block down from the school's front gate. I'll tell you what you need to know." Shoyuta nods. "Thank you." The principal of Aldra Junior High, Fujiwara, makes Shoyuta think of an oiled-up weasel like in ultra-retro Western animations. Either way, the dislike is pretty much immediate. He wonders if being unpleasant was a requirement in Aldra's hiring. Either way, the system is burning after meeting the elementary school. Shoyuta just has to figure out which target to direct Nedzu's wrath on first. The meeting with Fujiwara begins much the same way it did with Okada. The man sings the praises of Bakugo while acting like Midoriya has never existed in the first place. When Shoyuta brings up Midoriya, the man's face twists painfully. Like the kid wasn't worth the attempt to pretend to be nice. And, seriously? If these people loved quirks so goddamn much, then Shoyuta is shocked that they're bending over backwards retroactively for the kid. The whole world saw Midoriya break his bones on live TV with the power of that thing. Are these people stupid? Kaminari has more common sense, and Shoyuta once witnessed him shove 3 light bulbs in his mouth to light them all at once. It worked, of course, but at what cost to his sanity? I'll be honest with you, Aizawa-san. Fujiwara leans forward, like they're friends. They're not friends. Shoyuta fights the urge to lean back. I don't know how the boy was able to get into UA. Oh hell no. First off, if anyone was able to cheat the test, Nedzu would probably let them into the school if they were creative enough. Because only Nedzu knows what goes on in his head. Secondly, Midoriya earned his place. He placed high enough on the written exam, had All Might's recommendation, and was able to rack up an impressive amount of rescue points. So who was this guy to say that someone who earned their place didn't fing earn it? Shoyuta is also unpleasantly reminded of a hated teacher when he was in school. The man never believed that he earned anything because of his weak quirk. Unless it was detention. Shoyuta earned plenty of those because of that BSTRD. Are you suggesting that there is something wrong with the UA's admissions process? He asks carefully, making his voice even flatter as he stares holes into the man. Fujiwara jars, seemingly realizing his error just too late. Of course, I'm not suggesting that. The man sweats. I'm just saying that Midoriya, well, he wasn't supposed to get in. All the bad reports in his unrestricted file, especially the ones in Midoriya's third year, were to make sure that he didn't get into UA. This was direct sabotage of a student by people who were supposed to help him. If it weren't for All Might's recommendation, then it probably would have worked. Now, it's Shuta's turn to lean forward while the other man leans away. He asks, deadly quiet yet achingly loud in the office, the question that must be asked. Is it? Because that until recently Midoriya presented as quirkless. The man pales. Shoyuta tilts his head to the side. You've already insinuated that you and your staff were actively trying to undermine Midoriya's education, sir. I saw your board of distinguished alumni as well. Bakugo is on there and Midoriya? Well, I've read all those notes by the way. The ones that you thought would kill a child's dream before he even had the chance to realize it. And Midoriya is nothing like that in mine or other teachers' classes. Fujiwara turns an ugly shade of puce and stands, spit flying from his mouth that Shoyuta dodges. The boy is a liar. Shoyuta has a lot of patience. You have to have it in order to be an underground hero. Even he, however, has his limits. His quirk activates out of sheer anger as Shoyuta slams his hands down on the table. The principal flinches back, but he is going to say his piece. He is traumatized. And I'm willing to bet that you have had a large hand in that. He grounds out in a quietly measured tone. Midoriya has potential to be one of the greatest heroes that we have ever seen. But he needs to realize that he's not an acceptable sacrifice to get there. I'm assuming that you all made sure he knew that he was better off dead. But we have him now. UA will make sure he will shine as the best of us. In the end, you will have nothing to do with it, just a bad dream that he has long woken up from. Shoyuta blinks, the effects of his quirk dissipating as he stands. I would ask for any footage that you may have of Midoriya's time here. Given how you seem quite invested in Bakugo's success, I'm guessing that the footage has been long deleted. The other man flinches. He trembles from anger or fear, Shuta's not certain which. He also finds that he doesn't give a shit either. He, at least, has the recorded conversations with the principals. He'll have whatever Wada feels like sharing. It should be enough crumbs for Nezu to dig into. No matter. Nezu always liked a challenge. Shoyuta leans toward the man with a smile that he knows makes him look insane. Enjoy your job while you have it. As promised, Shoyuta meets Wada a block from Aldra Junior High's front gates. The man stands with a woman, near retirement age, dressed in the uniform for a cafeteria worker if Shoyuta has to guess. Wada waves and introduces him to her. Mito Reika, she says with a firm handshake. Wada said that you wanted to talk about Midoriya-kun. Shoyuta nods. I do. If that's all right. She smiles, full of grandmotherly fondness. Oh, he was such a sweet boy while he was here. I always set aside a bit of extra food for him. The other children, well, they would smack his tray out of his hands. And then he wouldn't have been able to eat otherwise. She pauses, twisting her hands for a moment. The other cafeteria workers and I felt so terrible. He was always so polite. And the way he went on about quirks. Well, it made you feel like you were something really special. I always wanted to do more for him, but the principal would never listen. Eventually, he threatened my job. And I need the work to take care of my granddaughter. Wada sighs, scratching the back of his head. There's a defeated sort of slump to his shoulders. We did what we could for the kid. The service workers, we don't get paid much attention to, but Midoriya was so nice. A lot of those kids, they treat you like furniture. But he was never like that. He was a genuinely good kid and never deserved what was inflicted on him. But the teachers just didn't care and the rest of us weren't listened to. He trails off for a moment, looking up at a tree. Flower buds already shedding away for green new leaves before looking Shoyuta in the eyes. I would come early, especially when you heard about a recent suicide. Some of them thought it was funny to leave red spider lilies on his desk. Aizawa Shoyuta knows intimately what it feels like to have the air knocked out of you. Those few seconds where you feel like you will never breathe again and that you are just drowning without ever being in the water for it to happen. Hearing about the flowers left on Midoriya's desk leaves Shoyuta feeling like that. He keeps his face blank and forces his quirk, which wants to activate out of sheer rage again, to stay quiet in his head. If he thought that he was angry about Okada's admittance about forcing him to look into her eyes or what Fujiwara inadvertently admitted, then he discovers a whole new untapped rage, the likes he felt when Shigaraki was reaching out to Azui in the US. This is wrong. He was ACHILD. Aldra will burn. Really? Shoyuta says, shoving his hands into his pockets so they don't see his hands shake in anger. The other man nods. I usually got them before Midoriya arrived at school. But not always if I was sick or something. If it wasn't that, then they would write on his desk. Midoriya would get in trouble for it if he didn't clean it up. The other janitor and I did our best, but there was only so much we could do. The poor boy, Mito clucks tiredly. He never deserved any of it. And Bakugu? Mito and Wada's faces darken. I'm unsurprised that he got into UA, of course. With a quirk like that? His teachers knew he could be a hero, but, well, a lot of them believe that might makes right sort of philosophy. Let the kids go wild with their quirks in class and the like. And Bakugo was at the top, so anyone beneath him felt his wrath, Wada says, touching his horns. Since everyone thought that Midoriya was quirkless and the two knew each for so long, he was Bakugo's primary target. The boy is a bully, Mito says sharply. And a brute. I hate to say it, I never want to label a child that way, but I wouldn't be surprised if he went down the route of a villain. He has no regard to those around him and no respect at all. No one did him any favors either. They never told him no. I think his parents tried to rein him in, but he spent most of the day at school. There's only so much you can do. Would you be willing to sign something to that fact? Shoyuta asks because this is the proof he'll need to make sure the duo isn't paired together for the exam. I'd like to make sure the two aren't partnered for any teamwork at UA. Of course, replies Mito while Wada nods his assent. After getting their contact information, Shoyuta decides to pass on a warning as well. They don't deserve to get caught in the crossfire of the storm that's brewing for these schools. Keep it to the fellow staff that aren't the teachers, but I'm going to set Principal Nedzu on the Aldra schools. I suggest looking for other work, or, if you like, come apply to UA. He'll help you find new jobs along with anyone willing to testify against them. Better ones. The two only nod with wide eyes and grim sets to their mouths. Are you sure? Mito asks. I'll make certain of it, Shoyuta promises. They did their best in a sheet situation with limited resources. Thank you for looking out for Midoriya when you could. It's probably because of people like them that Midoriya's faith in adults isn't entirely shattered, why Shoyuta was able to convince the kid to trust him in only a couple of days. He'll make sure that they're taken care of for that. Shud is a hero after all. Sometimes you can't save everyone, but you'll DMN well try to help good people if you can. Shoyuta emails the encrypted files of his recordings of the conversations with the principals and the workers to Nedzu before heading home with a terse suggestion of burning Aldra to the ground. He feels like he's aged about 10 years in the span of an afternoon as he walks back home. Shuda's head spins. Midoriya was suicide-baited and bullied horrifically. Midoriya, who is kind and empathetic, probably had the best reason out of any student he knew to turn villain. And he would be a terrifying villain if he went down that path. Midoriya wants to be a hero though. Midoriya spent most of his life assumed quirkless. Midoriya calls Bakugo Kaken, and everyone thinks that they are childhood friends. They are not childhood friends, hadn't been for years from Shuda's piece together. But Midoriya still lets people think they are. Midoriya looks so shocked when a teacher offers kindness and praise. Midoriya knew All Might before UA. Midoriya has a quirk that came out of nowhere with a convenient explanation for it. A picture has formed for Shoyuta of Midoriya's life before UA, in terms of school at least. And it is frankly horrifying to really think about it. It also was, in many ways, worse than Shuda's own shitty school experience before he came to UA. Really, the fact that Midoriya could be something resembling adjusted was frankly a miracle. Shoyuta sighs as he trudges through the door. I'm home. Hey. Hisashi greets cheerfully from the kitchen. There's my favorite listener. Shoyuta stands in the doorway, feels all the anger and tension sort of leave his shoulders with the tenderness in Hisashi's voice. He toes off his boots, shoves his feet in his house slippers, and makes a beeline for Hisashi. Shoyuta usually shows his love and affection in actions over words. Sometimes, however, you have a shitty day and just need to hug your husband. He hugs Hisashi from behind and buries his face into the crook of his neck. Logically, it's not the safest place in the world. Emotionally, however, Shoyuta never feels more secure than when he can do this, knowing Hisashi will protect him if he wants to hide away for a while. His husband turns around to face Shoyuta and wraps his arms around his waist. I take it going to the little listener's schools didn't go so hot, Hisashi murmurs after several minutes of standing there. He presses his lips to Shuta's hair and the tension drains more from him. People SCK and should be psychologically screened before becoming a teacher. He complains about Yagi's competency in teaching, but at least the man genuinely cares about his students and their success. Aldra actively sabotaged a student and made him feel like he was less than nothing. This puts Midoriya's willingness to break himself in pursuit of his goals in a more horrifying perspective. If only you can dictate how things are done in the education system. It's a daily disappointment that I can't do that, Shoyuta pulls back, scrubbing a hand over his face. Hisashi, it's a miracle Midoriya trusts any adult at all. I threw those schools to Nedzu. And would, maybe, like to personally punch each of Midoriya's teachers in the stomach if I could get away with it. Think that's assault, babe, he says, eyes gentle. But I know the feeling. Anyway, it's been a while since Nedzu got to rake subpar institutions over the coals. You may get a bonus. Shoyuta snorts. There's nothing really funny about the situation. But he's long learned that if you don't find something to hold on to, then the darkness of the world will swallow you whole. Sometimes, you need to light the way with humor. Not that he would tell Ms. Joke that. Shoyuta will go to the grave saying otherwise within her earshot. He has a reputation to maintain amongst his fellow heroes as well. It's not even that much of a joke either. Snipe brought Nedzu the last terrible school for him to raze to the ground and he got extra vacation time so he could see his family in America. Hisashi ushers Shoyuta to the table where dinner is laid out. He takes a moment to breath it in. Besides, you're making headway with the little listener, right? He seems to trust me at least. Or, realizes I'm not like his other teachers. But I've been working on him for the past couple days. Don't forget what you did for those kids at USJ there, Hisashi says as he pushes a bowl of rice to Shoyuta. They all know what you would do for them. His elbow twinges at the reminder, but his husband does have a point. I have enough to make sure he and Bakugo can't be paired together for the exam. He taps his chopsticks to the rim of his rice bowl in frustration. There's something that I'm missing though. And it's bothering me. You never did like a puzzle unsolved. I remember when you and Oboro would get into fights over if the ending of a mystery would make sense or not. A sort of bittersweet nostalgic fondness twists in his chest at the mention of Oboro, but, like many mentions of their friend, the ache doesn't hurt as much as it once did. Instead, Shoyuta allows a half-smile to flicker on his face as he remembers the old argument. He liked the conclusion of a mystery to make logical sense, while Oboro would argue about character and drama and how it was the journey that mattered rather than the end result. That probably said something about both of their personalities now that Shoyuta reflects on it. You have your night show tonight, right? Shoyuta asks his husband, wanting to put focus onto something else for a while. Who's your guest? He grins at that, easily rolling with the subject change. Miruko. Oh man, it's going to be a wild one. Hisashi falls into chatter about interview prep and his thoughts on the up-and-coming young hero as Shoyuta relaxes, thankful for his husband's ability to fill the silence so he doesn't drown in his own thoughts. LaRue Morgana, better known in the world of underground heroics as Madame LaRue, is a figure as unchanging and unending as time itself. Or so it feels like anyway. While underground heroes could go to the bigger support companies for the products that they need, the priority tends to go to the limelight heroes. So, Rather, there are smaller-scale operations to fulfill the needs of the pro-heroes that stick to the shadows. Madame LaRue is, arguably, the best of these smaller-scale operations. She's picky with her clientele, saying that she looks for the correct aura or something like that. Not that Shoyuta believes a lick of it, as her quirk has to do with longevity. If you can believe Madame LaRue, then she's been around since when quirks were just emerging, hiding in plain sight, and enjoying watching the years pass her by. Shoyuta, for some reason, is one of those lucky clients that she chooses to take on. But he doesn't know. But he's always had a habit of drawing in the odd ones. He did need to get some more smoke bombs, and Madame LaRue said she can talk to him about Midoriya's shoes. So, he leaves the apartment immediately after dinner to see her before he starts his patrol. The tiny shop front advertises Madame LaRue's psychic services in bright neon letters. She offers palmistry, crystal ball readings, aura readings, and her specialty, tarot. Shoyuta stares at the flickering neon eye in the window, wonders why he always finds the weird ones before heading inside. The shop is half-lit and smells strongly of incense and herbs. Jars line the faux dusty shelves advertising things like Eye of Newt and Tears of a Freshly Broken Heart. Hazy glow emanates from lamps covered in scarves. This is the front for where the best in underground heroics in Japan, and possibly the world over, get their support work done. Welcome, visitor, Madame LaRue's husky voice purrs out in the shop. I hope you are ready to peer across the veil. Erase her head. Just like that, the overhead lights flick on, bathing the entire shop in a bright fluorescent glow. Madame LaRue steps up from the back with a wide smile on her plump face. She barely comes up to Shuta's mid-chest with thick glasses magnifying her eyes. Her dark hair is streaked with gray, frizzing a bit. Though her face puts her anywhere between 30 and 50, and in some lights, she looks as young as 20. The maiden, mother, and crone, all rolled into one, sugar, she said with a grin and a wink when they first met. She hasn't changed since. Madam, Shoyuta greets, but allows the hug that she gives her. He bends down, letting her long brightly painted nails squish his cheeks as she looks him over. The hand pulls back and she grins at him. Always a man of few words, aren't cha baby cakes? Well, no worries. I got those smoke bombs that you requested. And we can talk about that photo you sent me. Shoyuta follows LaRue into the back where she pops open a bison skull on the wall and types in the code. A staircase rises from the wooden floor. So how is that fine husband of yours, Eraserhead? She asks as she sashays down the steps. Mick's fine. He says hello. But tell him he's still a honey-voiced charmer. She laughs deep and full. I listen to his show when I get the chance. Shoyuta will not be telling Hisashi that. He loves his husband and respects Madame LaRue, but he tries to make sure that the two of them are only in the same room at least twice a year, with enough time for Shoyuta to prepare the onslaught of extroversion and personality that comes out with them together. It's just a lot when it happens. Even more if Nemuri is somehow involved as well. Madame LaRue's support workshop, in contrast to her psychic shop, is all shiny and clean, well-maintained and organized. There's a meticulousness about the whole affair that shows for all her dramatics and personality. Madame LaRue is the best in the business. Now then, she begins once she gives him the smoke bombs that he asked for. I was mighty surprised when you sent me that photo of your student, Eraserhead. Because that boy, from what I could see of the sports festival, has a pretty powerful quirk. Shoyuta immediately knows that he's not going to like where this conversation is heading based on the sharp look in Madame LaRue's eyes. He does, Shoyuta agrees. She hums thoughtfully as she peers over her glasses at him. Right, tell me, what do you know how quirklessness? Probably not as much as I should have, he states, easily letting her take the lead on this conversation as he tries to ignore the churning in his gut. I know that there are some physical differences between a quirked person and a quirkless one. I know that they experience a lot of discrimination. Also the hate crimes and suicides in the quirkless demographic, especially amongst the younger generations, is pretty high. Some of those physical differences are usually internal, outside of the lack of a quirk, Madame LaRue states, warming up to the lesson. Wisdom teeth, which are an extra set of molars that are usually removed in the teenage years, An appendix, a vestigial organ that can become infected and rupture, which releases a poisonous substance to the body, and an extra joint in the pinky toe. Usually confirmation of the extra joint in the pinky toe is the way to go for a quirkless diagnosis. The slight twist to her mouth is enough to tell him what she thinks of the term, like being quirkless is some sort of disease. The recovery is quick though, as she takes out the picture of Midoriya's shoes. This leads to special footwear for the quirkless population, as their foot is both a bit wider and different shaped than people with quirks, even those with wide feet. Madame LaRue's long bright blue nails tap on the photograph. Shoes like this, for example. Quirkless people are the only ones who buy them. They're the only ones who they're made for. Shoyuta stares at her, desperately trying to feel like his world hadn't been turned upside down yet again for the week. He hears water rushing in his ears, but there is no water. It's his heart roaring and the blood from his body rush. What are the chances of a quirk emerging anyway with the joint? He asks, keeping his voice steady. He's not sure if he's doing a good job. 1 in a several billion shot. And even if it does happen, it's usually pretty weak, Madame LaRue answers. I've only seen it once years and years ago. Nothing as strong as what your student shows. Motherfucking goddamn. Problem child wasn't assumed to be quirkless. He was quirkless. But now he has a quirk. How the F does he have a quirk? There's a story passed around between underground heroes, those in the shadows. It's told in whispers, in backroom bars and on long stakeouts. It's about a villain that has been around since quirks emerged, who can take your quirk for his own with just a touch. But some of the heroes say he can give quirks as well. With the League of Villains gaining more traction, Shoyuta finds himself thinking of the story more and more. He thinks of Midoriya with a quirk that breaks his body, a quirk that he shouldn't have, and wonders for a split second. He wonders if he could be a villain in heroic clothing. But almost immediately he thinks of Midoriya's character. He is kind, compassionate, and full of empathy. Who stares down Shoyuta on that first day with a broken finger and fire in his eyes. The kid who faces down the Nomu, who sees Shoyuta in trouble and jumps in the fray in that stupid, reckless, self-sacrificingly heroic way of his. He doesn't know how Midoriya got that quirk, but it wasn't from a boogeyman passed around in the world of the underground. He knows his student that well to know that much. Sarehead? Eraserhead. Shoyuta snaps back to himself as Madame LaRue looks at him, eyebrow raised. You all right, sugar? Please keep this quiet. You don't need to tell me twice. She promises. I just hope that you figure out a way to explain it away if someone puts 2 and 2 together and comes after that kid. He has a good excuse in his file and All Might backing him up, Shoyuta says tiredly. He rubs his hand across his face again, wishing he could just face plant in his bed and sleep the rest of this day away. Plus, he has me. He didn't spend years perfecting his poker face for nothing. Only Hizashi and Nemuri can tell what he's thinking most of the time. He's perfected the dead-eyed stared and flat effect for a damn good reason. Midoriya was quirkless. He has a quirk. He wants to be a hero, so Shoyuta will help him be a hero. He says goodbye to Madame LaRue and takes his leave, thoughts swirling around in his head like a storm cloud. Here's what Aizawa Shoyuta considers when he leaves Madame LaRue's quirk theory. Well, not the whole of quirk theory, but a particular theory called the oppositional generational theory. Basically, it says in a generation of quirks there will be some that are similar yet fundamentally different. For example, there's a hero in the UK around Shuta's age called Level Up who can increase the power of a person's quirk by looking at them. It's pretty much the opposite of erasure. In UA alone, there's Kirishima and Tetsu who have a fundamental quirk of hardening their skin, except one is stone and the other is metal. Maybe not entirely opposite, but different enough for the theory to hold. He considers the legend of the boogeyman in the shadows, who can take quirks and give them back. No way Midoriya would go to him. Kid would rather be quirkless than be in a debt to a shadowy, terrifying figure. But what if there was a quirk that could be passed on, slipped through generation after generation? There's another story in the underground community as well about a succession of underground heroes. Soar, Lariat, Requiem, and others dating back to the vigilante days before Rhode Island New State Statute happened. These heroes' quirks oddly mutated, giving them increased strength, speed, and stamina. Oddly enough, the underground hero who developed it next was the protege of the one who had the mutation. Now that Shura's really thinking about the legend. Oppositional generational theory. If one quirk can give or take other quirks, then why can't one quirk from the same generation or close to it be passed on? Though how can it grow stronger with each generation? Shoyuta thinks of Midoriya and his sneakers and those wild, desperate eyes as he reaches out to save Uraraka, protect Shoyuta, to talk to Todoroki, to be a hero. And he wonders just what he's fallen into. Shoyuta will admit that he probably shouldn't have gone on patrol after talking with Madame LaRue. He probably should have just called it a night and went home. He was independent for a reason, and that reason was he could set his own hours. Well, amongst other things, but setting his own hours was, admittedly, a big draw. Leaving Madame LaRue's though, Shoyuta also felt too keen to go home and sit with BSRD, pacing through the apartment like the caged jungle cat, and updating already set lesson plans. He's a maelstrom of emotions from everything today. Patrolling sounds. So Shoyuta goes on patrol, even though he shouldn't, and gets a pretty nice gash on his side and his temple. He waves off concern from the officers on scene after they arrest the guy. Without thinking, he heads to the rooftop of Midoriya's apartment building. Maybe out of some need to see the problem child with this new information, maybe he wants to see if this is all really an act and the kid made some sort of desperate deal with a shadowy figure for a quirk. Maybe he just wants to see the kid and make certain that he's alright with his own two eyes, with this new information. Because there's being assumed quirkless and being quirkless and F-. This pretty much changes everything and nothing at the same time, doesn't it? Aizawa-sensei. The kid yelps in concern, forgoing using his hero name as they did on these nighttime chats. He's holding the mugs of hot chocolate tight. You're bleeding. Seriously, there's no way he got a quirk from the terror of the underground. Shoyuta would eat his capture weapon. It's largely stopped now, Shoyuta reassures. Maybe he should have gotten checked out. Midoriya raises an eyebrow and rolls his eyes. It's such a teenage gesture from him. It's also probably the most disrespectful thing he's ever done in Shura's presence as well. It feels like a win. Come on. We have a first aid kit in the apartment. And wouldn't your mother worry about you bringing a strange man into your apartment? Mom's staying with a coworker for a couple of nights. Her law firm has a pretty big case coming on and it's all hands on deck, even the paralegals. Problem child answers with a shrug. So, it's just me. Now come on, sensei, let's get you cleaned up. He says it with a light in his eyes, one that says that he plans on bringing up the next time Shoyuta hounds the kid about taking care of himself better. Which, you know, is probably fair. Shura's always been more of a do as I say, not as I do sort of teacher in quite a few regards. Either way, curiosity pushes his feet into the doorway of the apartment's rooftop. The door to the Midoriya's apartment is rather innocuous, but so is the rest of the building, so Shoyuta isn't that surprised. The kid gives him the mug of hot chocolate so he can open the door with his keys. Shoyuta clocks the all might and present mic keychains on it. Welcome to my home, sensei. Do you need help with your boots? Shoyuta pulls down his goggles. When they get inside, wincing at the dried blood on them. Nah. He hands the mug back to Midoriya, who exchanges his shoes for his slippers with practiced familiarity. He sets the guest slippers out for him before heading inside, calling that he'll go get their first aid kit. Shoyuta gingerly takes off his boots and puts the slippers on. The Midoriya's apartment is quite nice. Clean, well-kept, and pretty big. Shoyuta walks past the problem child's bedroom and keeps his expression carefully blank at the large amount of hero merch on the walls, particularly All Might. But he also clocks a decent amount of other heroes as well, both domestic and foreign. Is that a replica of his goggles? He also notes a stack of weights in a corner and a locked shelf on the desk. Interesting. Shoyuta continues on, not wanting the kid to come looking for him and see him staring at his bedroom. He walks past the living where he sees the news playing softly. There are pictures of Midoriya and a woman with long green hair that has to be his mother. In the baby pictures, there's a man with freckles and dark curls, who has to be the father in hero merchandising. There's a slightly more recent one. Midoriya and the man with some gray in those curls striking a pose in front of an American monument of some sort. Problem Child meets him in the dining area, carrying one of the largest first aid kits that Shoyuta has ever seen a civilian own before. Adding with what Shuta's already learned, the alarm bells of Midoriya's past just seem to ring and ring and ring in his ears. Both cups of hot chocolate are resting on the table as he sets down the kit with a heavy thunk. Right, Aizawa-sensei, I don't know how I can say this politely, Midoriya says with bright red tinge to his cheeks. But I'm going to need you to lift up your shirt. I can do it myself, kid, he offers instead. That's a really awkward place on your side though. Midoriya insists firmly with bright, determined eyes. I've been hurt there before. And it took me like an hour to dash. He stops as if suddenly remembering his audience. Midoriya bites his lip. Shoyuta remembers that second night when they talked about bullies. I get it, kid. Remember? A bit of tension releases from those shoulders as he fiddles with the kit, digging around for what he needs. I didn't want my mom to find out that it was getting bad, he confesses, not meeting Shuta's eyes. My dad makes good money and so does mom. But it doesn't mean that the money's endless, you know? And the private schools are really expensive. They couldn't afford to send me to another school. And it's hard to get into a private school anyway when people think you're quirkless. It hangs there, a casual admission of how quirks or the lack of one can determine your worth. Never mind your character or your compassion or your brain or the 1,000 other little things that make a person. My parents made good money too, Shoyuta confesses. And I went to a private junior high. It wasn't that much better. It was probably worse because a lot of the kids had the knowledge that, in addition to their quirks, they could probably buy their way out of trouble. Money, after all, was the only thing that Shoyuta ever seen surpass the worth of a quirk. He lifts up his shirt so his student can see the gash. Shuta's heart breaks a little bit, seeing how the kid easily assesses the injury and gets to work. It's not too deep, sensei. I think you're gonna live. Midoriya gives him a wan smile before continuing on. It's better at you. I heard about their policies toward anti-bullying for years. And they were the first school to make it clear a quirkless person could apply to any of their courses. But they're saying that a place is inclusive and it actually being inclusive. You is refreshing. It should be the norm. Yeah, it should, he agrees as disinfects the gash and hums thoughtfully. I don't think you need stitches. But I'd show it to Recovery Girl in the morning. He carefully closes the cut with some butterfly bandages before taking gauze and taping it down. How often did you have to do this, kid? Midoriya sits back on his heels. It's clear that he's internally debating just how much he can downplay the situation for him. Shoyuta raises an eyebrow because the kid is already in deep with the sharing. He seems to realize this as well because Midoriya sighs. Regularly since I was like 7. I've been keeping up with it recently. Recovery Girl says she won't heal my injuries anymore since the sports festival. Oh hell no. She what? Shoyuta growls out. The youthful heroine never ends up on his ever-evolving and shifting sheet list, but she just rocketed up to the top 5. Of all the irresponsible things to do with a student. It's not her fault. Midoriya defends, looking surprised by his vehemence. I kept breaking my arms. She didn't want me to become dependent on healing quirks to get out of it. Distantly, Shoyuta knows that's a fair point. But he's a kid with a quirk that's new to his body and he's still figuring it out. What the F-, Recovery Girl? Kid, you're 15, he says, resting his hands on those shoulders. They hold so much but feel so small under his hands. You're still learning how to control your quirk. You're allowed to mess up and make mistakes and get hurt. It happens with powerful quirks, even when students had them for 10 years. You had it less than that and you're doing better all the time with it. As your teachers, we have to help you. I'm going to talk with Recovery Girl tomorrow, okay? Midoriya looks up at him, before nodding. Okay. Shoyuta nods, dropping his hands. All right then. The kid looks down. There are some tears gathering in his eyes, but he seems to ignore them. Shoyuta does him the courtesy of ignoring them as well. I need to do your face, sensei. Do you mind if I pin your hair back? He nods, sensing that part of the conversation is over. Midoriya clips back his hair with a barrette. A washcloth is produced from somewhere along with warm water. Midoriya cleans away with the blood gently. Facial cuts are the worst, Midoriya mutters as he works. They'd avoid my face because of how much it would bleed. One of the kids, he has this quirk that made his fingers and nails super long at will. And he would scratch me during class. I had a kid who could control paper. Shoyuta shares, eyes shut because the warmth of the water feels nice. He liked to give me paper cuts. Nothing I could prove. Same, he was Kaken's friend. And that got him cash with the teachers. Shoyuta opens his eyes at that. He doesn't think he's going to get a more opportune moment than this to ask about Bakugo. Problem child, he says, hoping that darkness of the night and the relative intimacy of the situation of his student bandaging his wounds will coax secrets out better than the light of day. I have a question. And I hope that you can trust me enough to be honest. Midoriya looks at the ground, and he feels the kid's hand tremble slightly against his temple. I trust you, sensei, the kid answers after a long moment. There's something in his tone like shock, like he can't believe that he actually trusts Shoyuta. No, not Shoyuta, he can't believe that he trusts a teacher. Did Bakugo bully you? Midoriya bites his lip for a second, an internal conflict plays across his face. Shoyuta can only guess at an admittedly complicated history, and it's going to be a minefield to navigate within the coming months, he can feel it. But Midoriya glances at the news where Endeavor is on the screen and something in him steals. Why did seeing Endeavor give Midoriya that resolve? Yes, Midoriya says as he uses the butterfly bandages on Shuta's cut. He did. He was always so brash, you know? A leader, someone everyone wanted to follow. And then his quirk came in. It was powerful, so cool, well, it was a lot of things. And people just kept telling him he would be a hero. And then there was me. We were friends once. He down next to Shoyuta and grabs the All Might mug. The hot chocolate is probably more like tepid chocolate milk by this point, but Midoriya doesn't care. I don't know why I PSS him off so much. I don't know what it is about me that makes Kaken go all crazy or whatever. But I know I was failed by the system, but Kaken was too. No one told him no. Or that he was wrong. Or that what he was doing wasn't okay. And that's how you get bad heroes in the world, who think that just because they're powerful that they're owed something. I want Kaken to leave me alone and let me be a hero. But I want him to be the best hero he can be as well. That's pretty altruistic, kid, Shoyuta says into the quiet of the apartment. Midoriya looks up from under his fringe. Not really. Because I've seen how villainous Kaken can be. And I'd rather him be on the side of the heroes than not. The thought of him just turning. Like that if he loses his shot at his dream? It terrifies me, sensei. It's a big part of the reason why I kept my mouth shut because desperate people can do really stupid things. He pauses. And I want to be a hero who saves everyone. Maybe I can't save Kaken, but he deserves the chance to be saved by someone from his own worst impulses. He deserves the chance to be better. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. Because how can I call myself a hero if I don't offer him that chance, sensei? There's nothing else that Shoyuta can really say about that, is there?